Once upon a time, in a quiet village nestled at the edge of Lagos State, where the air smelled like roasted corn and wet red earth after the rain, lived a woman called Kemi Adelik. She was 89 years old. Her hair, long gone from thick black coils, had turned a soft silver, always tied in a simple scarf she'd folded the same way for over 60 years. Her back was slightly hunched now, but her voice still carried that same stern rhythm it had when she was once the feared home economics teacher at the local primary school. Every morning, she sat under the Udala tree by the compound's front gate, whispering to God through trembling lips as she counted her rosary beads. Her thumb always paused on the fourth bead, a habit even she couldn't explain. But deep inside her, it was the prayer she never finished, the one for her dead daughter, her only child, gone too soon. No one in the village ever saw Kemi cry, not even at the funeral, but her silence was louder than mourning wails. She wore white for a year, then slowly returned to her usual faded Ankara wrappers, the ones she stitched herself long before her hands started shaking. Her pain was stitched into the folds of her clothes. But what broke her wasn't her daughter's death. It was what came after, the girl her husband brought into their home. Stepdaughter, they called her. Dupe, tall, sharp tongue, eyes that judged everything, and a way of walking that suggested she had already claimed ownership of everything under that roof. Even before Kemi's husband, Paradelik, could introduce her properly, Dupe had taken over the kitchen. She started small, changing the pepper brand, hiding Kemi's old mortar and pestle, complaining that Kemi's meals were tasteless, like prison food. But Kemi kept quiet. She kept quiet because Pa Delik was already slipping memory-wise. He forgot things, names, days, sometimes his own sentences. But he remembered Dupe, called her his late brother's daughter, said he owed it to family to raise her. She's the only blood left from my side, he had insisted one night when Kemi finally gathered courage to speak. Let her stay. We're old. Let peace reign. Kemi nodded. But her spirit didn't agree. The house that once smelled like fried plantains and camphor now reeked of kerosene and control. Dupe made herself the center of everything. Visitors, money, errands, even Sunday church dress codes. At first, the neighbors whispered, "That young girl is too bold. Oh, is she really a relative? Why is Mama Kemi now sitting outside so often? Looking lost?" They whispered. Then they stopped, because Dupe started smiling in public, acting sweet at the borehole, singing church hymns louder than everyone, quoting scripture in market disputes. But inside the house, she was a storm. And one Tuesday evening, the type that hangs heavy in the air with the threat of rain, something happened that would change everything. Kemi was in the backyard. She had just finished washing her underwear by hand, the same way she had since 1956. Her fingers ached, but she always felt calmer after chores. She walked back inside slowly, feet brushing the cold floor. That's when she heard it. Laughter. A woman's laughter. But not joy. Mocking. And then a slap. A slap that echoed like it had bounced off the walls of the ancestors. Kemi dropped her basin. She stood frozen, because the slap hadn't come from Pa Delik. It had come from Dupe, and it had landed on her own wrinkled cheek. Kemi stood there, eyes wide, the side of her face stinging. Tears refused to fall. She looked at Dupe. "Why?" Kemi asked quietly. Dupe rolled her eyes, arms folded. "You want to ask me why? For what? You think you can keep hiding that money Papa gave you?" Kemi blinked. "I don't know what you mean." Dupe stepped closer, voice raised. "You think I didn't see it? That brown envelope he tucked under your mattress. You sly old woman. Still trying to control everything even from your grave." Kemi gasped. "From whose grave?" Dupe smiled. Dark. Cold. "Yours." Before Kemi could say another word, the door creaked. Footsteps. Then, a voice. Familiar. Steady. "Kemi, what happened here?" It was Pa Delik. He had walked in, and he had seen the slap. Kemi's lips parted, but no words came. Dupe spun around, wide-eyed, fake tears already rising. "Papa, it's not what it looks like." But Kemi just fell to her knees, her old knees, cracking on the tile, hands trembling, eyes locked on the man she had loved for 64 years. She whispered, "Help me." And then, Pa Delik stood still. His walking stick trembled against the tiled floor. His eyes darted between the two women, the one on her knees and the one still standing with her arms crossed. The silence was heavy. Even the wall clock seemed to pause. Outside, thunder grumbled low and distant, as if the heavens themselves were listening. Kemi's voice broke the stillness. "Help me, before it's too late." Her words weren't loud, but they carried a weight no one could ignore. Her lips quivered. Her hands were pressed together in a plea, not just for her body, but for her dignity. Pa Delik stepped forward, his brows furrowed. "Kemi? Who slapped who?" Dupe rushed in. "Papa," she tripped. "I was helping her. You know she's old. I just caught her before she fell and she's confused. She thinks I hit her." Kemi turned slowly, her voice still trembling. "I was not confused the day I married you. I'm not confused today." She raised her hand on me. Pa Delik's eyes met his wife's. For a moment, something in him flickered. The man who once stood before a church full of people and vowed to protect this woman. The man who built this house, room by room, with her prayers and his hands. But then, he blinked, slowly, and the flicker dimmed. "Kemi," he said softly. "Dupe is young. She might not have meant it." Kemi gasped. Her hands fell from their pleading position. Her mouth opened, but no words came. A crack of thunder filled the silence in her place. She rose, slowly, painfully, without any help. "I see," she whispered. "So, it has come to this." Dupe lowered her eyes, but a faint smile pulled at the corner of her lips. Kemi turned and walked to her room, each step dragging pain, not just in her bones, but in her soul. She didn't eat dinner that night. She didn't pray aloud. She just sat in the corner of her room, staring at the small wooden box where she kept the last photograph of her daughter, Saad. Her baby, her heart, gone at 38, dead after childbirth. A baby girl, stillborn. Dupe had moved in 2 weeks after the funeral. That night, Kemi didn't sleep, because something deeper than betrayal was growing in her chest. Something worse than being slapped. She was being erased. The next morning, the village woke to the smell of yam porridge and the sound of sweeping. Kemi was already outside, clearing leaves from the compound. Her wrapper was tied tightly around her waist. Her scarf was firm. Her movements were slow, but sharp. She greeted neighbors with smiles. Small ones. Dupe stayed inside. By afternoon, visitors came. Mama Ronk from the Women's Guild. Pastor Elijah's wife. Even old blind Babate from across the street. They came with bowls of food, with small coins, with quiet words, because someone had seen the slap. A child. Toby, the neighbor's boy. He had been by the window chasing a lizard. He told his mother, who told the church elder's wife, who told everyone. And in the village, things spread fast, like oil on fire. But Dupe smiled through it all. She cooked. She laughed louder. She played gospel music on the radio. She even knelt beside Kemi in the living room to apologize, with her eyes wide and crocodile tears falling like beads. "Mommy, please. I was angry. I didn't mean to hurt you." Kemi looked at her. She said nothing. She simply took her walking stick and walked away. That night, rain poured. Heavy, angry, loud. And while the thunder crashed, Kemi began digging. In the back of her room, beneath the loose tile only she knew how to lift, there was a plastic bag. Inside it, an old notebook, some documents, and a folded envelope. She sat down, unfolded the papers, and looked at the thing Dupe was really hunting for. It wasn't just money. It was something more. Something that could burn the lies from their walls like acid on mildew. She held it to her chest, then whispered, "Not yet." The next week passed in tension. Dupe tried to act normal. She called Kemi mommy in front of visitors, took her to the clinic for blood pressure, even helped bathe her feet one morning. But Kemi knew. She always knew when someone was pretending. She had seen it in parents who lied about their children's homework, in students who cried fake tears over missed tests. Now she saw it in her own home. Then came Sunday, church service. Everyone dressed in their finest. Dupe wore a gold lace buba and iro, head tie high like a queen. She held Pa Adelik's arm proudly. But Kemi came in white, plain, wrinkled, but white. And when the congregation stood for testimonies, she slowly rose. The church fell silent, because no one could remember the last time Mama Adelik gave a testimony. She walked forward, each step deliberate. When she reached the front, she turned, faced the crowd, faced her husband, faced her stepdaughter. Then she said, softly but clearly, I am not dead yet. The church froze. I am not mad. I am not confused. I may be old, but I still know the smell of lies. And soon, very soon, the truth will speak louder than the tongues of snakes. She paused, looked at the congregation, then whispered, pray for me. She turned and walked back to her seat. Dupe's smile faltered. Pa Adelik looked confused. But the church began to murmur, because the old woman had said something. And when an old woman speaks like that in the open, it means something is coming. The church didn't stop buzzing that entire week. What did Mama Adelik mean? What was she talking about? Why now, after all these years? Some said it was just old age. Others said it was deeper, that perhaps a secret long buried was beginning to rise. And Dupe began to feel it. Not in the open, of course. In the open, people still greeted her, still complimented her geli, still nodded when she handed out peppermints after service. But behind her back, the murmurs had begun. One evening, as she walked through the market to buy ogbono, she overheard two women whispering. Nah, she slapped Mama Kemio. For real? In front of Papa Adelik? God will judge, ah. Dupe turned sharply, eyes burning. But the women were already walking away, baskets on their heads. That night, she stormed into the house, throwing her nylon bags onto the kitchen counter. She's doing it on purpose, she muttered. This old witch. She wants to scatter everything. She barged into Kemi's room without knocking. You think you're smart, ABI? Kemi looked up from her wooden stool. She was threading a needle. Her eyes moved slowly to Dupe. I was smart long before you learned how to talk back to elders. Dupe's nostrils flared. You think you can disgrace me in this village? In front of church members? Keep talking. Just keep talking. Kemi smiled faintly, a tired, ancient smile. Disgrace comes to those who wear it like perfume. I only carry my name. Dupe stepped forward, raising her hand. But this time, she froze. Kemi hadn't flinched. She just looked straight at her and whispered, if you raise that hand again, I will show you what I used to do when I caught thieves stealing meat from my school's kitchen. Dupe hesitated, then turned and stormed out. But her steps weren't as firm as before, because she knew something was changing. A few days later, it happened. The brown envelope, gone. Kemi had kept it under her wrapper drawer, buried under old nightgowns. She checked that morning. It was no longer there. Her hands trembled. She pulled out every cloth, turned the drawer upside down. Nothing. Her legs buckled beneath her and she sat on the floor, whispering, Alua. Not yet. Not like this. A knock came. Not on the door. On her window. She turned. It was Toby, the neighbor's boy. Same one who had seen the slap. He stood outside with a small folded note in his hand. She opened the window. He passed it to her, then ran off. Kemi unfolded the note with trembling fingers. It read, she gave it to a man in a red car. I saw. He drove off quickly. No name, no signature, but enough to confirm what she feared. Dupe had taken it. And now, whatever was in that envelope could be in anyone's hands. That evening, Kemi waited. She didn't eat. She didn't sleep. She sat in the living room, lights off, rosary in hand, lips moving like waves of silent prayer. Around 10 p.m., she heard footsteps. Dupe entered. Her heels clicked against the tile. She stopped when she saw the silhouette of Kemi in the dark. "Why are you sitting here like a ghost?" Kemi didn't reply. Dupe dropped her handbag, removed her earrings. Then she sighed. "Let's stop pretending." She walked closer, sat across from Kemi. "I know you kept that envelope for years. I always wondered what was inside. But when I opened it, she chuckled. "It's not just money, Mommy. It's power." Kemi's hand gripped her rosary tighter. Dupe leaned forward. "There's a document there. Land ownership. And guess what? Papa signed it over to you, not me. Not even his blood relatives." "You," she hissed. "How convenient." Right before he started forgetting things. Kemi looked up slowly. "That land was bought after Sada's wedding. I sold my mother's gold to help him complete the payment. The documents were supposed to be in both our names. He changed it without telling me. Out of guilt." Dupe tilted her head. "So you admit it's yours?" Kemi nodded. "Yes." Dupe smiled coldly. "Well, not anymore." She stood. "But don't worry. I'll take good care of it. Maybe build a shopping complex. Name it after myself. Dupe Plaza. It sounds nice, doesn't it?" She turned to walk away, then paused. "By the way, Papa doesn't need to know. He won't understand anymore. He barely remembers what he had for lunch today." She laughed and disappeared down the hallway. Kemi sat still, eyes closed. Tears rolled silently down her cheeks. The land wasn't just property. It was where her daughter was buried. In the far corner under the mango tree, with no gravestone, just a small white cloth tied around the trunk. Now, even that sacred place was slipping away. But that night, the wind changed, the power went out, and in the darkness Kemi made a decision. She rose, slowly, reached into her cupboard, opened a hidden seam inside her old church wrapper, and pulled out the original copy, the real deed, the one she had hidden before. What Dupe stole was a duplicate, a decoy. The envelope had always been bait. Kemi held the real paper to her chest and whispered, "Alua, give me strength. The lion is old, but her teeth are not gone." She packed the document in a plastic sheet, tied it in a nylon, and placed it under her pillow. Then, she did something she hadn't done in over 20 years. She picked up the small Nokia torchlight phone beside her bed, scrolled slowly, stopped at a name, Barrister Ogunjimi, her daughter's old friend. She pressed call. The phone rang, and when he answered, she said just 4 words. "It's time. Come home." Morning came with a heavy sky, the kind of sky that held its breath. Kemi was already awake, seated on the veranda, staring at the hibiscus flowers that lined the edge of the compound. She had not slept. The night had whispered many things to her, but she had made her decision. A battle was coming, and this time she would not fight it with silence. Inside, Dupe moved about like nothing had happened. She hummed a church hymn as she ironed her blouse, the same voice that once hurled insults now singing praise. But Kemi heard none of it. Her ears were attuned to something else entirely. By midday, a black Toyota Corolla pulled into the compound, dust rising from the gravel. The door opened, and out stepped a tall man in his late 40s, skin the color of polished ebony, glasses perched on his nose. Barrister Kunal Ogunjimi. Once just Kunal, Sada's best friend from secondary school. Now a respected lawyer in Lagos. He had come, as promised. Kemi rose, her knees protesting slightly, but her heart steady. Kunal stepped forward, bowing respectfully. "Mama Kemi." She smiled faintly. "Kunal." They hugged, firm and long, 2 souls bound by memories and the pain of loss. Dupe emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands with a towel. She froze when she saw him. "Who is that?" she asked sharply. Kunal turned. He gave her a long, assessing look, then simply said, "Barrister Ogunjimi." Dupe's face twitched. "Lawyer." Kemi spoke gently. "He was like a son to me, long before you were even part of this house." Dupe scoffed. "We don't need lawyers here. This is a family matter." Kunal smiled politely. Then perhaps your family should sit down and listen. He pulled out a file from his bag. It was thick. Dupe's smile faded. Inside, the living room was tense. Pa Delik sat in his armchair, blanket around his legs, sipping lukewarm pap. His eyes looked distant, confused, but not entirely lost. Kunnel opened the file. These, he said, are the original land documents for the property in question, the 5 plots behind the mango grove near the stream, registered in the year 1992. He placed a photocopy on the table. Signed by Mr. Adelik, witnessed by Mama Kemi, and countersigned by my father, late Chief Ogunjimi, the village notary at the time. Dupe's lips tightened. But I have the documents, she said. I saw them myself. They're with a buyer already. Kunnel looked at her. Calm. Cold. What you have is a photocopy. A forged one, altered with white ink and shaky signatures. Filed under a different registration number. The man who received it has already been arrested. Dupe's face drained of color. What? Your name, Kunnel continued, was never on any legal title. Not as inheritor. Not as witness. Not as blood. And most importantly, he looked at Pa Delik. Not with his consent. Dupe turned to her father. Papa, tell him you gave me those documents. Pa Delik blinked. Slowly. Confused. I don't remember. Dupe gasped. You don't? Papa, it was just last week. He looked away. Kemi's eyes watered, but she didn't cry. She placed her hand on her husband's shoulder. Softly. He did give it to you, Dupe, she said. But not the land. He gave you shelter. He gave you food. He gave you a home when you had nothing. But now, you want the grave of my daughter too. Dupe turned. Her voice cracked. What do you mean? Kemi stood, tall, firm. That land, that back corner, is where sod rests. Silence. You could hear the birds outside. Dupe's mouth opened, then shut. She's buried there? Kemi nodded. There was no money for proper burial then. Only us. So I wrapped her myself. My baby. My only one. And we buried her under the mango tree, with her name carved into the root. Dupe stepped back, trembling. Kunnel closed the file gently. This is not just a property case. It's desecration. It's fraud. And if Mama Kemi chooses to pursue it in court, you may lose more than your reputation. Dupe turned to her father. Papa, please, say something. Pa Delik looked up. His voice, barely above a whisper. I don't know who you are anymore. That was it. The sentence that broke Dupe. Her face crumpled, and for the first time she sat. Not in arrogance, but in defeat. Later that evening, Kunnel took his leave. He hugged Kemi again. I'll keep the documents safe, Ma. If she tries anything again, we'll act fast. Kemi nodded. Thank you, my son. As he got into his car, Dupe watched from the corridor. She didn't speak. She didn't move. And when the car disappeared into the distance, she walked inside, went straight to her room, and slammed the door shut. That night, Kemi sat beside her husband, rubbing his feet with warm water and balm. He looked at her with teary eyes. Did I do this to you? She smiled, weakly, sadly. You forgot. That's not the same as betrayal. He nodded, then closed his eyes. Outside, the wind began to blow again. But this time it didn't feel cold. Felt like a page turning, like something buried was finally beginning to breathe again. 3 days passed. Not a word from Dupe. She stayed locked in her room, only emerging to fetch water or eat a few spoonfuls of rice from the kitchen. Her usual chatter, her loud calls for Mommy and Papa, gone. The house was finally quiet, but Kemi knew it wasn't peace. It was the eye of a storm, so she waited, patiently. Every morning, she sat outside, plucking bitter leaf under the guava tree. Her eyes watched the gate, her ears stayed open, and her spirit remained prayerful. Then, on the 4th evening, just as the sun began to sink behind the compound wall, Dupe came out. Her face was swollen from crying, but her eyes, They still held that fire. That refusal. She walked straight to Kemi, hands behind her back. "I want to ask for forgiveness," she said, voice low. Kemi didn't reply. Dupe knelt. "I've wronged you. I know. But I need you to understand. I was desperate." Still, Kemi said nothing. Dupe continued, her voice rising slightly. "My own family didn't want me. I grew up in different houses, different hands. My mother dropped me at a cousin's place and never came back." Kemi's hands stopped moving. "I thought," Dupe went on, "that coming here, that being accepted by Papa would finally mean I belonged somewhere." She looked up, eyes pleading. "But you never loved me." Kemi blinked. Finally, she spoke. "I fed you. I bathed you. I bought you new wrappers from my market savings. I prayed over you every Sunday morning before church." Dupe's face softened. "I loved you. The only way I knew how," Kemi whispered. Silence sat between them, until Dupe whispered, "Then why did it feel like I was always in Sada's shadow?" Kemi's eyes glistened, but her voice remained calm. "Because Sad was buried, not forgotten." Dupe looked down. The evening breeze picked up, blowing leaves across the compound like whispers. Then Kemi added, "You slapped me, Dupe, and still I forgave you. But now, I ask you, will you forgive yourself?" Dupe didn't answer. She just stood slowly, turned, and walked back inside. That night, Kemi had a dream. She stood in a white room filled with mango trees. Sad was there, smiling, carrying a child in her arms. She said nothing, only reached out and pressed something into her mother's palm. When Kemi woke up, her hand was still clenched. She opened it slowly. Of course, there was nothing inside. But in her heart, she felt a strange new thing. Release. 2 weeks passed. Dupe began to change. She swept the compound every morning before the rooster crowed. She fetched water for Kemi without being asked. She even started attending women's prayer meetings again. But the village had long memories. Some women still avoided her. Others offered polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. And Kemi? Kemi watched. She didn't fully trust yet. But she didn't chase her away either. One Saturday morning, while tying tomato stems in the garden, Dupe walked up holding a worn envelope. Kemi looked up. "What's that?" Dupe knelt beside her. "I found it in my room. It's the buyer's receipt. The one I collected when I tried to sell the land." Kemi stared at it. Dupe held it out. "I want you to burn it." Kemi took it slowly, stared at the handwriting. Her heart beat hard. Then she stood, walked to the outdoor stove, struck a match, and dropped the paper into the flame. They both watched it burn to ash. Nothing was said, but something shifted. Later that week, a knock came at the gate. It was a young girl in school uniform, eyes bright, holding a letter. "To Mama Kemi," the girl said. "From the school headmistress." Kemi opened it with trembling fingers. It was an invitation. They wanted her to come speak to the graduating class of the primary school, to share wisdom with the girls, to remind them what it meant to be strong. Tears filled her eyes. She hadn't been inside that school since she retired over 2 decades ago. And now, they wanted her back. She looked at Dupe, who had followed her out to the gate. "They want me to speak." Dupe nodded. "You should go." Kemi smiled faintly. "Come with me." Dupe's eyes widened. "Me? Yes." Dupe looked down, then nodded. "Okay." The next day they went. Kemi wore her old teaching wrapper, navy blue with yellow symbols. Dupe tied her gelly, adjusted her blouse, and held her arm like a daughter. As they walked through the school gates, children gathered. "Grandma Kemi, Mama Teacher." Their voices rose like praise songs. The teachers clapped. The headmistress bowed. Chairs were set under the mango tree, the same tree where Kemi once punished latecomers. She sat down, cleared her throat, and told her story, not just about education, but about silence, about standing tall, about forgiveness. She didn't mention Dupe by name, but her eyes drifted there often. And when the children clapped, when the drums played, when cola nuts were presented, Kemi smiled. Because for the first time in many years, she was seen again. Not as the old woman on the bench. Not as the forgotten widow, but as Kemi Adelik, daughter, mother, teacher, survivor, and somewhere in the back row, Dupe wiped a tear from her eye, because maybe, just maybe, she was starting to understand. The applause still echoed in Kemi's heart long after they returned home. That evening, as the sky blushed with the colors of sunset, she sat in the backyard peeling agbalumo for Toby and two other children who had followed her home after the school speech. They sat cross-legged, their eyes wide with wonder as she told them stories about the olden days. How palm oil was pressed by hand, how girls balanced calabashes on their heads without spilling a drop, how letters came by bicycle postmen with dust on their sandals and truth in their pouches. Dupe watched from the window. Her arms were folded, but her eyes were soft. Something in her shifted each time she saw Kemi with children. The gentleness, the patience, the way her voice danced between laughter and silence like an old lullaby. Later that night, while washing the dishes, Dupe spoke quietly. "Do you think, if things had been different, Saad and I could have been friends?" Kemi looked up from her chair. She didn't reply immediately. Then, "You both had fire, maybe too much, but fire can warm a house, or burn it down." Dupe smiled faintly. "She would have hated me, wouldn't she?" Kemi shook her head. "No, she would have pitied you, the way I do." Dupe's smile faded, but she didn't walk away, because pity wasn't rejection. It was acknowledgement, and that was still something. The next day, the church bell rang unexpectedly. Someone had died. Old Mama Funk, the vegetable seller, slipped in her bath. Heart gave out. The village gathered. It was a swift burial, as was custom. Dust to dust, cloths tied high, hymns sung with cracked voices. But at the burial, something unusual happened. As the crowd dispersed, an elder approached Kemi. Mama Alarape, the same woman who, years ago, used to gossip about how Kemi's womb only produced one child. She touched Kemi's arm gently. "We see you," she said. "You survived." Then she bowed slightly and walked away. Kemi stood there, frozen. The words repeated in her heart. "We see you. You survived." And in that moment, it wasn't just a sentence. It was a redemption, a confirmation that the years of being slapped by fate and by family had not erased her. But as often happens in life, just when the clouds begin to clear, a new storm brews. Later that week, Dupe received a phone call. She was outside, watering the hibiscus, when her phone rang. She answered. "Hello." The voice on the other end was male. Low. Familiar. "Dupe, it's me." She stiffened. "You shouldn't be calling me. You think you can walk away?" The voice sneered. "After everything I did for you?" Dupe looked toward the house, making sure Kemi wasn't near. "I told you, I'm not going through with it. I'm not selling anything. It's over." The man laughed. "You owe me, Dupe. Or have you forgotten who paid your rent in Ilupaju? Who bailed your useless brother from jail?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "That was before. I've changed." "Changed?" He spat. "You? You're still the same street rat trying to dress like a princess." Dupe's hands shook. "Don't call me again." She hung up, but her face was pale. Her past wasn't done with her yet. That night, Kemi heard her crying. Not loud sobs, just quiet, muffled weeping from the kitchen, where Dupe sat alone, hugging herself. Kemi entered silently. She stood for a moment, then walked to the kettle and poured warm water into a cup. She added a spoon of honey and passed it to Dupe. No questions, no judgment, just presence. Dupe took it, her hands trembling. "I thought I could bury my past." Kemi sat beside her. "You can't bury what you haven't faced." Dupe sniffled. "He wants money. He knows about the land. I told him I wasn't going to sell it, and now he's threatening me." Kemi looked at her sharply. "You told him about the land?" Dupe nodded, ashamed. "It was before I even moved in properly. I thought I was going to get rich. I bragged to him. I was stupid." Kemi's heart sank. She had feared this, that there was another layer, another hand in the shadows. But she kept her voice calm. "Did you sign anything?" Dupe hesitated, then shook her head. No, but he knows things. He's connected. Kemi looked at her, truly looked, and saw not a rival, but a scared girl, the kind she used to teach, the kind she used to protect. We'll handle it, Kemi said. Dupe looked up. But how? Kemi's voice was steady. First we pray, then we prepare. The next morning Kemi went to the church. Alone. She knelt at the front pew, facing the crucifix. Her lips moved in silent prayer, but her eyes were open, filled with fire. She wasn't praying just for safety. She was arming herself. She returned home and brought out a small tin box from the back of her wardrobe. Inside were receipts, letters, old photographs, everything. She laid them out on the bed like weapons. Dupe entered the room and stopped short. What's all this? Kemi looked at her. This is what we'll use. Dupe frowned. Against who? Kemi's voice dropped. Against the real enemy. Because now it wasn't just about land. It wasn't just about a slap. It was about setting fire to the lies that had lived in silence for too long. The midday sun beat down hard, but inside the house, the air was colder than harmattan. Kemi and Dupe sat side by side on the bed, papers spread before them like sacred scrolls. Kemi held up an old photograph, faded at the corners but still clear. In it, a younger version of herself stood beside a smiling man in a brown agbada, Pa Adalik's late elder brother. And right beside him, a boy, no older than 16, with sharp eyes and a lopsided grin. Dupe squinted. That's Jide. Kemi nodded slowly. Your friend. The one who called. Dupe's mouth dropped open. You know him? I remember everything, Dupe. I've just been quiet. Dupe looked away. Kemi continued, picking up a letter. This was from 2006. Your uncle asked Adelik for help. Jide had gotten into trouble. Again. But Adelik said no. Said he was tired of fixing things for him. She handed Dupe the letter. The signature was unmistakable. Dupe's voice dropped. I didn't know all that. He told me they were close. That Papa trusted him. Kemi's eyes narrowed. He lied. Dupe was silent. Then she whispered. He said if I didn't sell him the land, he'd tell everyone I forged the documents, that I stole it from Papa, that I tricked him when he was weak. Kemi's jaw tightened. Let him talk. Dupe's head jerked up. What? Kemi stood, her voice sharper than usual. Let him talk. Let him come. But this time we'll be ready. That evening, Kemi made a rare trip to the palace, the Oba's compound. The guards were surprised to see her. They offered her a seat, whispered among themselves. Within minutes, she was called into the inner chamber. There, seated in a large armchair with a beaded staff in his right hand, was Oba Rufus Alayemi II, old friend of Pa Adelik, former student of Kemi's. He smiled when he saw her. Ah, Mama Kemi, the lioness herself. What brings you here after all these years? She bowed. Kabiyesi, I need your help. And so, she told him everything, not with dramatic flair, but with facts, documents, names, dates, the land, the fake sale, the slap, the threats, the silence that had stretched for years, cracking only now under the weight of truth. The Oba listened, nodding slowly. When she finished, he stood. Where are the documents now? Kemi handed him the originals. He examined them carefully, then looked up. You want justice? I want protection, Kemi said. Not just for me, but for the memory of my daughter, and for the girl I may not love, but who has finally started to change. Oba Rufus nodded solemnly. Leave it with me. 3 days later, Jide came to the village. He arrived in a sleek red car, windows tinted, perfume sharp like insult. He wore gold chains and designer slippers. He stopped at the house, stepping out with the confidence of a lion. Kemi was sitting outside. Dupe stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Jide smiled broadly. Ah, Mama, you're looking younger every year. You should thank me. I'm here to complete our deal. Kemi didn't blink. Dupe stepped forward. There is no deal. He turned to her, smile gone. You sure you want to do this? Because I still have the fake documents. I can go to the police. I can go to the Oba. You won't need to go far. A voice interrupted. They all turned. Oba Rufus himself was approaching, flanked by 2 chiefs and 2 men in uniform. Jide took a step back. Kabiyesi. The Oba raised a hand. You brought forged papers into my land. You threatened a widow. You tried to sell land that belongs to the dead. Jide's mouth opened, then closed. Officer, the Oba said. Do your job. Jide shouted. Wait, it was her. He pointed at Dupe. She told me the land was hers. Dupe didn't move. She didn't flinch. She just said softly, I lied, but I stopped. You didn't. The officers moved. Handcuffs clicked. And just like that, Jide was taken away. That night, the compound was quiet again. Kemi sat under the mango tree with Dupe. The same mango tree where Saad was buried. The white cloth still tied around its trunk, fluttering in the wind like a flag of peace. Dupe broke the silence. I didn't deserve your help. Kemi didn't answer. Dupe added, I almost destroyed everything. Still no reply. Finally, Kemi looked up at the stars. They say when a person betrays you, you can either curse them or change them. Dupe looked at her. Did I change? Kemi sighed. You're trying. And in that moment, that was enough. But unknown to both of them, a new problem was brewing. From the shadows of the village. From a place they hadn't looked. From someone they never suspected. Because sometimes, the deepest betrayal isn't from outsiders. It's from within the family. The morning after Jide's arrest, the village was buzzing. People gathered in small clusters under mango trees, by palm wine joints at the borehole. Mama Kemi Don finally show power. They say the Oba himself came. I heard the land is for her late daughter. And no wonder. That girl too overdue. But inside the Adelik compound things were still. Calm. Too calm. Dupe had swept the front yard. Kemi was boiling beans on the outdoor stove. The scent drifted through the air, carrying with it the feeling of something ancient, something familiar. Peace. Real peace. But only for a moment. Because while Kemi stirred her pot and Dupe rinsed clothes in the basin, a black motorcycle pulled up at the gate. It wasn't the usual Okada man. This one wore dark glasses. He didn't speak, just dropped a brown envelope on the ground and sped off. Dupe frowned. Another letter? Kemi wiped her hands and picked it up. No name, no stamp, just one sentence scribbled on the back. You think it's over? Inside the envelope was a single photograph. Grainy, old, but clear enough. Kemi held it up. It was a picture of Pa Adelik. Not recent, not young either. Somewhere in the middle, standing with another woman. Not Kemi, and a child, a girl. Dupe leaned closer, squinting. That's Papa. But who's that? Kemi said nothing. She stared at the photo for a long time, her fingers trembling. Then she whispered, That girl. She looks like. She didn't finish the sentence. Because suddenly it clicked. The earrings, the chin, the eyes. Kemi turned sharply toward the house. Where is your father? Pa Adelik was asleep in his room, snoring softly. Kemi entered slowly, photo in hand. She sat beside him, shook him gently. Wake up. He blinked. What is it? Kemi? Is it time for my medicine? She held the photo up. Who is this woman? He squinted. Then his face changed. His eyes dropped. His lips trembled. Kemi, I was going to tell you. She inhaled deeply. So it's true. He sat up slowly. She was from before I met you. A woman I knew in Abaddon. I didn't think the child was mine. She left. I never heard from her again. Kemi's hands shook. But this girl looks like Dupe. He looked confused. What? Dupe, who had been standing silently at the door, stepped inside. What are you saying? Kemi turned to her. Your mother. You said she dropped you off and disappeared. Dupe nodded slowly. Yes, I never knew her name. Kemi turned back to Adelik. What was the woman's name? He looked down, then whispered, Tosin. Dupe gasped. I remember that name. Someone once called me Omo Tosin when I was small. I thought it was an insult. Kemi dropped the photo. The truth settled in the room like a heavy fog. She stared at Dupe. You are not Adelik's niece. Dupe swallowed. I'm his daughter. The words hit like thunder. Silence. Long, chilling. Even the birds outside seemed to pause. Kemi turned away. Her hands clutched her wrapper. She felt dizzy. The girl who had slapped her, insulted her, tried to steal from her, was her husband's own blood. Dupe stepped back, eyes wide, mouth trembling. You didn't know? She asked Adelik. He looked ashamed. I suspected. But when you came, you said you were my brother's daughter. I didn't want to question it. Dupe's voice cracked. You let me suffer. All these years. You left me in strangers' homes. You never looked for me? I didn't know, he shouted, then coughed violently. Kemi stood abruptly. I need air. She walked out, heart pounding. The compound spun before her eyes. Everything she thought she knew was being rewritten. She leaned against the mango tree. Tears poured down her face. How could God allow this? All this time, she had prayed against a stranger. But the enemy was not a stranger. She was family. That night, Kemi didn't speak. She didn't eat. She sat in her room, lights off, holding her rosary like a weapon. Dupe knocked once. No answer. Mommy, she whispered. I didn't know. Still silence. Dupe leaned her forehead against the door. I didn't come to destroy you, I swear. I came because I had nowhere else. I thought I was claiming what I deserved, not stealing what was never mine. Inside, Kemi listened, but she didn't move, because forgiveness is not like flipping a switch. Sometimes, it takes time. The next morning, Dupe was gone. Her room was empty, her clothes folded, her basin stacked. No note, no farewell, just gone. Kemi stood in the doorway, hands on the frame. Her mouth opened, but no words came. Only one question in her heart. Was it better this way? Days passed. No word. Then a week. Then two. The compound felt hollow again. Pa Adelik had retreated into silence. Kemi kept to herself. But every night, she stood by the gate, staring at the road, waiting, hoping. Then one evening a soft knock came. Not at the gate, at the kitchen door. She opened it, and there she was, Dupe, but not in fine lace or gold slippers. In a plain wrapper, no earrings, eyes puffy, shoulders lowered. She knelt, without a word. Kemi stared at her, then finally spoke. Why did you come back? Dupe whispered, because I remembered whose daughter I am. Kemi didn't move. She stood at the kitchen door, hands still gripping the rusted handle, eyes locked on Dupe. The girl remained on her knees, head bowed low. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was loud, too loud. Years of pain, betrayal, confusion, and now blood. Kemi's lips finally parted. Where did you go? Dupe looked up slowly. Betrayal. I stayed with Mama Beezy, the trader I used to help when I first came to Lagos. She gave me a mat in her shed. Let me wash plates for food. Kemi frowned. You suffered. Dupe nodded. I needed to. Her voice shook, but she kept going. I needed to know what it meant to lose something I never understood in the first place. Family, forgiveness, shelter. Kemi stepped forward. Dupe's eyes widened, expecting rejection. But instead, Kemi reached down. She placed her hand on Dupe's shoulder and whispered, You are my husband's child. That makes you family. And whether I like it or not, it also makes you mine. Tears spilled from Dupe's eyes. She dropped her head into Kemi's lap, sobbing uncontrollably. For the first time, her weeping wasn't out of shame. It was out of belonging. Later that night, they sat on the veranda together. No light, just the stars above and the distant sound of a generator humming in a neighbor's house. Dupe nursed a cup of pap. Kemi stirred a pot of herbs on the small coal stove, the smell of lemongrass thick in the air. Dupe broke the silence. I used to lie awake at night as a child, imagining what it would be like to have a mother, someone to comb my hair, scold me when I did wrong, hold me when I failed. Kemi didn't respond with words. She reached out and began undoing Dupe's scarf. Then, carefully, with trembling fingers, she parted her hair and slowly began to comb it. Dupe closed her eyes. A tear rolled down her cheek. No one had touched her hair since she was 7. Kemi whispered, "This is not forgiveness. Not yet. But it is the beginning of something." Dupe nodded. "That's enough for me." The next morning, Pa Delik seemed more lucid than usual. He called out, "Kemi, where's that stubborn girl? The one who burns my plantains." Kemi chuckled. "She's here." Dupe came in shyly, drying her hands with a towel. Pa Delik squinted. "Is that Tosin's daughter?" Dupe's eyes widened. "You remember?" He nodded slowly. "How could I forget? You have her forehead. That woman had a temper. May God rest her soul." Kemi turned to him. "You knew." He nodded again. "But I was ashamed. By the time you arrived, I had already promised Kemi so much peace. I didn't want to stir dust from the past." Dupe stepped closer. "Then, do you accept me now?" He reached for her hand, slowly, weakly. "I accepted you long ago. I just didn't know how to show it." She took his hand and kissed it. The moment lingered. 3 people. 1 family. Finally, uncovered. Over the next few days, something miraculous happened. People in the village noticed the change. Mama Kemi and that girl, they were walking to the market together. They saw them at the health center, Kemi translating medical terms, Dupe helping old women carry buckets of water. Whispers turned to nods. Nods turned to smiles. The same mouths that once gossiped began to greet them both. "Good morning, Mama Kemi." "Ah, Dupe. God bless you." Forgiveness, it seemed, had roots, and it was starting to grow. But one afternoon, a strange knock came. Not at the front gate, at the back door. Kemi opened it and found a small wrapped package. No name, just one sheet of paper tucked underneath. She picked it up, unfolded it, read it, and froze. Dupe walked in, drying her hands. "What's that?" Kemi didn't answer. She slowly opened the package. Inside was an old cassette tape, the kind no one used anymore, and written on the paper were 4 words. "Ask him about this." Dupe leaned closer. "What's going on?" Kemi's voice was barely a whisper. "I don't know, but I think the past isn't done with us yet." That evening, Kemi dusted off an old cassette player from the top shelf of her wardrobe. Creaked open like a coffin. She placed the tape inside, pressed play. The room filled with the sound of static. Then a voice. Adelik's voice. Younger, stronger. He was speaking in Yoruba, and his words were sharp. "We cannot tell Kemi. If she finds out, everything will scatter. Let her believe the girl is your niece. We'll raise her, get what we need, and she'll never know." The recording cut. Then laughter. Then silence. Dupe stepped back. "What was that?" Kemi's hands trembled. "That wasn't just your father." She looked at the tape again, closed her eyes. "That was a Delik, talking to someone else. But I know that voice." Dupe frowned. "Who?" Kemi opened her eyes slowly. "His best friend. Chief Salako." Dupe blinked. "The same Chief Salako that owns half the land in this village?" Kemi nodded. Suddenly, the years of confusion snapped into focus. The lies, the confusion around Dupe's origin, the obsession with the land, and that lingering feeling that Kemi had always been kept in the dark. "Dupe," she said, voice calm but cold. "We need to dig deeper, because the truth, the real truth, hadn't even started to bleed yet." The next morning arrived with a strange stillness. Even the chickens in the compound seemed quieter than usual. The sky was gray, not with rain, but with tension. Kemi sat at the table, the cassette tape lying in front of her like a curse. Her fingers ran along its edge as if hoping it would explain itself. Dupe hovered nearby, arms crossed. "You're sure it was Chief Salako?" Kemi didn't speak. She didn't need to. The voice was still ringing in her head. Let her believe the girl is your niece. We'll raise her. Get what we need. What did they need? Why hide the truth? Why deceive her for so long? The betrayal from Adelique was one thing. But if Chief Sulaco was involved, that meant the rot wasn't just inside the house. It was tied to the land itself. Later that day, Dupe returned from the market with fresh palm oil and a burning question. Do we confront him? Kemi looked up from her sewing. Not yet. Why? Kemi leaned back. Because we don't go to war without knowing the terrain. She stood, walked to her room, and returned with an old biscuit tin. Inside were yellowing receipts, photographs, a few black and white passports, and one crumpled land survey. Dupe watched as Kemi laid everything out like pieces of a puzzle. What are we looking for? Patterns. Dupe frowned. Patterns? Kemi pointed to one of the documents. Look, this survey, dated 1993, signed by the village surveyor and Chief Sulaco. She handed it to Dupe. Dupe's eyes widened. This is the same land you and Papa bought. Kemi nodded. Now see this? She picked another sheet. A deed of interest, issued 2 years later, with a different name listed. Sulaco's son. Dupe gasped. They tried to transfer the land out of your hands? Behind my back. They never expected I'd keep the originals. She sat down heavily. All this time I thought it was just greed. But now I see. It was theft. Pre-planned. Hidden behind family smiles and lies. By sunset, Kemi had made her decision. They were going to the palace. But not to the Oba. Not yet. They were going to see someone else. Mama Risi, the widow of the late village surveyor. She lived at the edge of town, where the houses gave way to the forest path. They found her outside, feeding her goats. She was old but not weak. Her eyes still sharp. Her tongue even sharper. When Kemi explained why they had come, Mama Risi's mouth twisted. Chief Sulaco? She spat. That man. May fire roast his shoes. Dupe blinked. Kemi leaned forward. So you know something? Mama Risi laughed bitterly. My husband told me before he died. Sulaco came with another man. Made him redraw the boundary lines on paper. Paid him small money. Told him it was for adjustment. Nothing serious. Dupe stepped forward. And the land became his son's. Yes, until your husband bought it honestly. But by then, they had already filed false interest documents. Only reason it didn't go through? The notary died that year. The file stayed in limbo. Kemi exhaled sharply. And now, Mama Risi reached under her stool, pulled out an old ledger. Here, my husband's journal. He wrote everything. Dates, names, even drew a small map. Kemi took the book as if it were gold, because to her it was. She stood. Thank you. Mama Risi nodded. Expose him. I've been waiting 20 years for someone to. That night, Kemi didn't sleep. She and Dupe pored over the ledger under lantern light, fingers stained with dust and memory. Everything aligned. Sulaco had tried to take the land. Adelique was part of it. And Dupe had been brought into the house not as a favor, but as a distraction. A tool. But something had changed the plan. Sada's death. Her burial on that land. And Kemi's quiet refusal to sell. That tree, the mango tree, had unknowingly protected the land. Because no one dared build over a grave. Even thieves feared the dead. The next day, Kemi returned to the Oba's palace. She handed over the journal, the receipts, the map, and the tape. The Oba read silently, listened, then looked up, his face stern. I trusted Sulaco. Kemi said nothing. He continued, this is not just deceit. It is spiritual robbery. Taking from the dead, dishonoring a grave, bringing a child into a home under false pretense. He stood, voice cold. I will summon him, and it will be public. 3 days later, a town hall meeting was called. Chairs arranged under the large village tree. The sun was hot, the people restless. Kemi and Dupe sat in the front row. Chief Sulaco arrived late. Agbada flowing, beads clinking, confident smile, until he saw them. and saw the Oba's face. Then, the color drained from his cheeks. The Oba rose, addressed the people. He laid out the truth, the forged documents, the voice recording, the boundary theft, the manipulation, gasps, murmurs, hisses. Salako tried to speak. It was a misunderstanding. Silence, the Oba thundered. This woman you tried to cheat. She raised this village's daughters. She buried her own child under the tree you tried to steal. She is more rooted in this land than your lies ever will be. He turned to the chiefs. This man is stripped of his chieftaincy title. Effective immediately. The village roared. Salako collapsed into a chair, sweating, humiliated. And Kemi? Kemi didn't cheer. She didn't smile. She just bowed her head and exhaled. Not because the war was won, but because the truth had finally stood up. The dust from the town hall meeting had not yet settled when whispers began to spread through the village. Did you hear? Chief Salako stripped of his title. Ah, it's Mama Kemi who fought him. 89 years old, but still strong like fire. Everywhere she walked, people greeted her with newfound respect. Some even bowed. Children pointed at her, whispering, "That's the woman who beat the chief." But inside Kemi's heart, there was no joy. She had carried truth like a weapon, yes, but truth also cuts the one who wields it. That evening, as the sun set behind the mango tree, she sat with Dupe. The younger woman was quiet, her eyes fixed on the ground. Finally, Dupe spoke. "Mommy, do you hate me?" Kemi turned slowly. "Why would you ask that?" Dupe's voice cracked. "Because everything you fought for, everything you exposed, it all began because of me. Because I was brought here as a lie." Kemi placed a trembling hand on her shoulder. "You are not the lie, child. The lie was what they told us. You were just caught in its web." Dupe swallowed hard. Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve your kindness." Kemi shook her head. "You don't deserve my hatred either. That belongs to the men who betrayed us both." That night, the compound was restless. Pa Delik coughed violently in his sleep. His memory came and went like a faulty lantern, sometimes bright, sometimes dark. At midnight, he woke suddenly, calling out, "Kemi! Kemi! Where is Saad?" Kemi froze. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hand clutching his. "She's gone," she whispered. "Long ago." His face twisted, as if hearing it for the first time. Tears filled his eyes. "I wanted to tell you about Tosin, about the land, about everything, but I was afraid." Kemi wiped his face gently. "You were not just afraid," she said. "You were weak, and your weakness became my suffering." He looked at her with eyes clouded by shame. "Forgive me," he whispered. Kemi closed her eyes. This was the moment she had imagined for decades, him begging for forgiveness. But instead of triumph, all she felt was exhaustion. She finally said, "I will not curse you. I will not bless you. I will only leave you to God." And with that, she rose and left him weeping in the dark. The next morning, news came that shook the village again. Chief Salako had fled. During the night, he disappeared, leaving behind his compound, his wives, and his title. Some said he ran to Lagos. Others whispered he was hiding in Cotonou. But what mattered was this: he was gone. And with him, the last shadow of deceit had lifted from Kemi's land. Yet peace did not fully return. Because while the village now saw Kemi as a heroine, inside her home, the wound remained. Pa Delik grew weaker by the day. And Dupe, though repentant, carried a heaviness she could not shake. One afternoon, Kemi found her sitting under the mango tree, staring at the white cloth tied around its trunk. "What are you thinking of?" Kemi asked softly. Dupe looked up, her face pale. "I keep wondering, if Saad were alive, would she have forgiven me? Or would she have hated me for all I've done to you?" Kemi lowered herself beside her. "Saad was fire, quick to anger, quick to laugh. She would have shouted at you, maybe even fought you." Dupe smiled faintly. "That sounds like me." "Yes," Kemi nodded. And because of that, I think she would have forgiven you. In her own way. Dupe exhaled, a shaky sound. Then maybe there is hope for me yet. That evening, Kemi prepared yam porridge with smoked fish, the dish Saad had loved most. She set 3 bowls on the table. One for herself, one for Adelique, and one for Dupe. As they ate, the silence between them was no longer heavy. It was healing. But even as the food warmed their bodies, Kemi's heart carried a quiet dread. Because she knew what the elders always said. When the truth finally comes to light, death is never far behind. And as she looked at her husband struggling to lift his spoon, she wondered if his time was almost here. The night was thick with stillness. No wind, no crickets, not even the dogs barked. Kemi sat by the window, rosary in hand, whispering the same prayer she had said for over 40 years. But this time something felt different. Inside, Pa Adelique lay on his mat, breathing slow, too slow. Dupe was asleep beside him, curled on a wooden stool, head resting against the wall. The lantern flickered, then dimmed. Kemi didn't move. She simply watched, waited, prayed, and just before dawn, he exhaled. One final breath, then silence. A silence that didn't feel peaceful, felt final. The cry rose just after sunrise. A long, aching wail that pierced through the compound. Dupe's voice, raw and trembling. "Papa! Papa, please!" Kemi came in slowly, kneeling beside her. She touched his face. Cool now, the warmth already gone. She reached for his eyes, closed them gently, then whispered, "Sleep, Adelique. The truth found you before death did." The compound quickly filled. First the neighbors, then the church women, then the youth who had grown up calling him Baba Teacher. Condolences were offered, water boiled, chairs arranged. The pastor arrived, then the local elders. But it wasn't until the Oba himself walked in, wearing his royal agbada and holding his beaded staff, that the entire village understood. This was not an ordinary burial. It was the farewell of a man whose household had lived through scandal, but whose wife had restored honor. And they came not just to mourn him, but to honor her. During the service, the pastor asked if anyone wanted to speak. Dupe stood. All eyes turned. Her wrapper was plain. Her head was uncovered. Her voice shook as she spoke. "I once came to this house full of bitterness and greed. I thought I had to take what was never given. I thought love was a thing to be stolen." She paused, looked down. "But I was wrong. I was blind. And now, the man I called father is gone. But he gave me one thing I never expected." She looked at Kemi. "A mother." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Kemi didn't move, but her eyes glistened. Dupe sat, and silence returned. Later that evening, after the body was laid to rest near the mango tree, beside the unmarked grave of Saad, the mourners dispersed. Kemi sat alone at the graveside, chewing kola nut and spitting softly into the soil. "You were not perfect, Adelique," she whispered, "but you gave me a life, a child, a name. And now, I bury you beside the one thing we both loved, even when we couldn't show it." She pressed her palm to the earth. "I forgive you." A breeze passed, lifting the edge of her wrapper. Felt like acknowledgement. That night, Dupe found Kemi sitting by the kitchen stove, staring at the flames. She sat beside her. They didn't speak for a long time. Then Kemi said, "You know what your name means, don't you?" Dupe nodded. "The one who has returned." Kemi smiled faintly. "Fitting." Dupe looked at her. "I want to stay. I want to build here. I don't know how, but I want to make this place better. Not for me, for her." She pointed toward the mango tree. Kemi's eyes softened. She would have wanted that. Dupe swallowed. "And you? Do you want me here?" Kemi didn't answer immediately. Then she reached into the pocket of her wrapper, pulled out a key, placed it in Dupe's hand. Dupe stared at it. "What's this?" Kemi's voice was low. "The back room. Sada's old room. I locked it after she died. But if you're going to stay, then it's time to open it." That night, Dupe walked to the room with shaking hands. She placed the key in the lock, turned it. The door creaked open. Dust hung in the air. A wooden bed, a folded blanket, a mirror cracked at the corner, books stacked neatly on a stool, and on the wall a faded photo. Sad, smiling, bright, full of life. Dupe stepped inside, fell to her knees, and wept, not just for the past, but for the future, because this time she would build, not steal, not take, build. Back in her room, Kemi lay on her mat, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. She whispered softly to herself, "She has returned." She smiled. Then, she closed her eyes, not to sleep, but to rest, because for the first time in decades, the house felt whole again. The rain returned that night, not the angry kind that flattens rooftops and floods gutters, but the soft, forgiving kind. The kind that taps gently on the zinc, as though asking permission to wash away old memories. Kemi lay in bed, wrapped in her favorite wrapper, the indigo one with yellow embroidery, the same one Saad gifted her after her first teaching award. It was frayed now, the fabric thinned by time, but it held her like an old friend. Outside, Dupe was folding the laundry under the awning, humming a slow hymn. She didn't know that Kemi had not moved from her bed in hours. She didn't know that the last thing Kemi did before lying down was write a letter. She didn't know that inside that letter was everything. The next morning, Dupe entered Kemi's room quietly, as she always did, carrying warm pap, smiling. "Mama, you didn't wake early today. I made your favorite." But Kemi didn't stir. Her face was peaceful, her hands folded, and beside her head, the letter. Dupe dropped the tray. "Mommy?" she called, voice trembling. She rushed forward, shaking her gently. "Mommy, please, please." But she already knew. Kemi Adelik had gone. Not with fear, not with regret, but with completion. The funeral shook the village, even more than Adelik's, because this time they weren't burying a man of status. They were burying a woman of substance. People came from outside the state. Old students, former colleagues, traders, pastors, women from church. They filled the compound, spilled into the roads. Even Mama Alarape cried. She taught us how to fight with silence and with fire. The burial was held beneath the mango tree, beside Saad, beside the orange sapling she and Dupe had planted. The pastor read her favorite psalm. The school children sang her favorite hymn. And when the first shovel of earth fell on her grave, the sky opened. Not with rain, with sunlight, golden, warm, a blessing. Later that night, after everyone had left, Dupe sat by the grave, holding the letter. She hadn't read it yet. She had waited until she was alone, until the moon was high. She unfolded it with trembling fingers. "And read, my daughter, if you're reading this, then I have finally gone to rest. Do not cry too long. I have done enough crying for both of us. You were not born from my womb, but you were born into my pain, and somehow, into my peace. Forgiveness is not a gate. It's a road, and we walked it together. Thank you for returning. Thank you for staying. Plant more trees. Feed more mouths. Teach more girls. And when the wind blows through the leaves, know that I am still here, whispering, watching, smiling. Kemi Adelik, your stubborn mother." Dupe pressed the letter to her chest, and for the first time since she'd entered that house as a stranger, she cried like a daughter. Weeks passed, then months. The orange tree began to grow. Children from the village came every Saturday to the Saad Foundation, learning to sew, bake, read, write, and believe. Dupe became Auntie Dupe, the woman who taught without raising her voice, who smiled like someone carrying a secret only the wind understood. And every evening, she sat beneath the two trees, mango and orange, pain and hope. The graves beneath them no longer marked endings. They marked beginnings. And when the wind blew, she smiled, because she heard her mother's voice, still whispering, still guiding, still proud. Years passed. The mango tree grew taller, older, its bark thicker, its roots deeper. Beside it, the orange tree blossomed, bright, tender, alive. This fruit small at first, then firm, sweet, abundant. Children ran under their shade after Saturday classes. Girls practiced tying head wraps and boys recited proverbs about patience and pride. In the distance, women stirred pots, humming the same songs Kemi once sang while peeling yam. Time moved gently now, and in the middle of it all, Dupe remained, not as the bitter girl who once came searching for power, not as the liar who forged documents and raised her hand against the old woman who fed her, but as the woman who had been broken and rebuilt. The sod foundation expanded. One classroom became 3, a tailoring shed, a cooking hall, a library named after Mama Kemi, where girls could sit and read stories about other women who had fought and survived. Local government officials visited. Even the new Oba came. He bowed at the trees, planted one more beside them, a guava, in honor of peace. But Dupe didn't seek titles or praise. She remained in her mother's house, still swept the compound, still washed her wrapper by hand, still lit the kerosene lamp by 7 p.m. every evening, whispering, "Good night, Mommy," into the darkness. And every year on the anniversary of Kemi's passing, she would sit at the base of the mango tree and read the letter again. By then, the paper had browned. The ink was fading, but the words never lost their weight. Plant more trees, feed more mouths, teach more girls. One day, a young reporter from Lagos visited. She had heard whispers about the woman who turned a slap into a school. She brought cameras, microphones, journalists. She asked Dupe for her story. Dupe smiled gently and replied, "This is not my story. It is my mother's. She taught me that what you inherit doesn't always come through blood. Sometimes it comes through silence, through shame, through forgiveness, through staying." The reporter paused. "What would you say to the woman who raised you, if she were still alive?" Dupe looked up at the trees. Her eyes glistened, and she whispered, "I came to your house as a stranger. I leave it as your daughter." That night, the wind returned, gentle, familiar. It rustled the mango leaves, then danced through the orange branches. It curled around Dupe's window, then carried itself up into the dark sky, past rooftops, past stars, past time itself. And if you stood very still in that moment, if you closed your eyes, you would hear it. A voice, soft, proud, "Good girl."
The first thing anyone heard was the thunderous whir of propellers slicing through the calm Abuja afternoon sky. The second was silence. Not from the jet, from the crowd gathered outside the glossy, flower-draped wedding hall of the Grand Elim Estate, one of the most expensive event centers in the FCT. It was a wedding so grand that even governors sent their regrets in monogrammed envelopes. All heads turned upward as the silver and white private jet hovered overhead and began its slow descent toward the exclusive helipad behind the venue. Phones went up. Security stiffened. Guests whispered. "Who is arriving by private jet again?" one bridesmaid asked, pressing her palm to her chest. "The governor's wife?" "No, the governor already came in a black range," said another woman, squinting through her lashes. "Maybe some Dubai dignitary?" Inside the hall, Desmond Olawaju was adjusting his agbada before a gilded mirror when his cousin ran in, breathless. "Bro, you won't believe who just landed." Desmond smirked without looking. "Another senator?" "No," the cousin whispered, mouth dry. It's Nike." Desmond froze. "Nike who?" His cousin licked his lips. "Your ex-wife, Ade Nike." The hall trembled. Outside, the jet doors opened with a hiss, and she stepped out. She was dressed in an emerald green lace gown, hand-beaded with crystals that shimmered like secrets under the sun. The gown hugged her curves modestly but with regal confidence. Her geli was folded high, firm, bold, unapologetic. Her earrings swung like small chandeliers. Every step she took down the aircraft stairwell was measured, queenly. But it wasn't the dress. It wasn't even the private jet. It was the children. Not one. Not two. 3 little boys walked beside her, their hands in hers, dressed in identical ivory agbadas, caps tilted like princes. Triplets. The crowd gasped in unison. One elderly auntie dropped her hand fan. Someone near the gate whispered too loudly, "Wait, no, wasn't she barren? Isn't she the one Desmond divorced because she couldn't conceive? But those are her children?" A videographer who had been filming the groomsmen slowly panned his camera toward the scene. His assistant whispered, "Make sure you get her face, this one go trend." Adenike didn't flinch. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She walked through the growing crowd like parting a sea, head held high, her sons at her side, her silence louder than any microphone. Her heels clicked softly on the marble as she approached the entrance like she belonged there, like she owned it. Inside, the music paused as murmurs spread like harmattan fire. The bride's makeup artist stopped mid-stroke. The groom's father dropped his champagne flute. The bride herself turned to her chief bridesmaid in confusion. "Who's everyone looking at?" Then the doors opened. And in walked Adenike Olarwaju, or whatever her new name was now. The ushers stood stunned. She didn't wait for them. She simply handed one of her sons a gold-embossed card and said, "Tell them your mummy was invited." The boy marched forward with innocent confidence and handed it over. The usher read it, blinked. Her name was there. First class. Front row. Desmond had invited her to mock her. Humiliate her. He thought she'd come looking tired, thin, and jealous. He didn't expect this. Adenike walked into the reception like she was walking through a season she'd already survived. She didn't acknowledge the whispers. She didn't look at Desmond. She didn't need to. All she did was guide her boys to their seats, adjust their caps, then sit down and wait. There were cameras everywhere. But the moment was already seared into memory. The woman he called barren, the woman he discarded, the woman who vanished, had come back. Not with bitterness, not with revenge, but with 3 beautiful sons. And a jet. Before the private jet. Before the whispers. Before the triplets. There was a woman who believed in love more than herself. Her name was Adenike Owolabi, and 6 years ago, she married Desmond Olarwaju in a humble but heartfelt wedding held inside the main hall of Rima Baptist Church, Surulere. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. They wore matching white lace. She borrowed her geli. He borrowed his cousin's shoes. The food ran out halfway through the reception, but their smiles never did. Adenike looked at Desmond like he was her answered prayer. Because to her he wasn't rich yet. He was barely surviving. But she had seen his mind, sharp, ambitious, fire-breathing, and she swore to walk beside him until that fire became flame. And so she did. Their first apartment was a tiny 2-bedroom in Aguda, with peeling paint and cockroaches that refused to die. Adenike worked as a front desk officer at a school in Yaba, while Desmond jumped from contract to contract, writing property proposals, chasing investors, pitching his future to anyone who would listen. He'd come home some nights with dust on his shoes and disappointment in his eyes. And every night, Adenike would boil water, rub his feet and say, "You'll make it, my love. Just don't stop." She cooked for his meetings. She ironed his shirts. She typed business plans late at night. She sold her late father's land in Ibadan so Desmond could buy his first plot of land in Aja, the turning point in his career. When the money finally came, it came fast. And Desmond changed just as quickly. The first thing he bought was a Benz. The second was a duplex in Lekki. The third was silence. He stopped saying, "Thank you." Stopped praying with her at night. Stopped coming home early. His igbadas got longer, his phone passwords got stronger. One day, he came back with a new Rolex and new rules. "You can stop working now," he said. "Stay home. Look the part. No wife of mine should be entering Danfo again." Adenike obeyed, but something in her spirit began to unravel. She missed the classroom. Missed structure. Purpose. Community. But most of all, she missed the Desmond who used to hold her hand when he had nothing. And then came the whispers. 6 years and no issue? Ah, it's spiritual. She should go and see Pastor Bolu for deliverance. She must have aborted in her past life. Adenike heard it from market women, from ushers at church, from Desmond's own mother, Mama Funmaleo, who called every week to remind her that time was running out. It's not me that's complaining, oh, Mama would say with a chuckle. But Desmond is an only son. What are we waiting for? Adenike did everything. Fast-tracked ovulation. Drank herbs. Went for tests. Poured anointing oil on her stomach every night. But nothing changed. Except Desmond's patience. And his tone. The final crack came one rainy night. The compound generator had just gone off. The house was dim, lit only by backup bulbs. Adenike was folding laundry on the couch when Desmond walked in, soaked and irritated. You didn't wait for me to eat, he snapped, flinging his car keys onto the dining table. I thought you were eating out, she replied gently. Do I look like someone who ate? She stood to help him with his jacket, but he shoved past her. Desmond. He turned sharply. 6 years, Nike. What are we doing? Are we roommates? Prayer partners? Abi, what exactly is the plan here? Adenike froze. Desmond, I've been trying. Trying what? To be barren. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. I've seen your test results, he said. And I'm telling you now, the problem is spiritual. She stepped back. Are you saying I'm cursed? I'm saying, he spat, that I need a child. An heir. A son. And if you can't give me that, then what exactly are you good for? The days that followed felt like slow poison. Desmond stopped speaking to her. He started sleeping in the guest room. Started leaving the house before dawn and returning after midnight. He removed her photo from his phone wallpaper. The staff began to treat her like a shadow. And one Saturday morning, it happened. She walked into the kitchen to find the housemaid giggling over a phone. A chat thread. With Desmond's name at the top. My baby. When are you coming again? That your wife, she day see her period yet? You know you're the one I want. Once she leaves, we're free. Adenike's hands trembled. She didn't confront him. There was no need. He had already left her in every way that mattered. That night, it rained so hard the roof leaked. She stood in the bedroom, staring at the same bed they once prayed over. Desmond walked in, casually removing his Rolex. Pack your things, he said. Just like that. No argument? No explanation? She reached for him. He stepped back. Go and stay with your sister. I'll send your things later. My sister is in Canada. He didn't blink. Not my problem. Adenike stared at him with wide, red eyes. Desmond, we built this life together. He scoffed. You carried nothing but bad luck into this house. The moment I married you, things slowed. Now I know why. She dropped to her knees. He turned his back. She cried out his name. He didn't turn around. Instead, he called his driver. Come and carry Madam's bag. She's leaving tonight. Adenike stood outside the gate of the house she helped build. Rain soaked her to the bone. She held a single nylon bag, her wrapper, Bible, and one change of clothes. Nobody from the estate offered help. Not the gateman. Not the driver. Not even the neighbors who once admired her. She was no longer Madame Adenike. She was just nobody. And Lagos doesn't stop moving for nobodies. But as she walked out of Lekki Phase 1, soaked and shaking, one thought echoed in her heart. God, please, let this not be the end of my story. And somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled. Not just from the sky, but from the future. It was in Guarimpa that Adenike found the kind of roof that didn't judge her. Not a mansion. Not even a flat. It was a self-contained room at the back of her old friend's compound, tucked behind a mechanic's workshop and a makeshift barbershop where Davido's songs blared day and night. Majip, the friend, was the kind of woman who could insult you and hug you in the same breath. Ah, Adenike Olawaju, she had screamed when she opened the gate. Are you mad? You didn't tell me Desmond threw you out like expired yogurt? Come inside before I slap sense into you. Adenike had collapsed into her arms, shaking from hunger, pain, and the humiliation that clung to her like second skin. I have nowhere to go. Dupe had simply pointed inside. Enter. I don't have much. But what I have we'll share. If it's Gary, we'll soak it together. The first few weeks blurred. Adenike barely ate. She barely bathed. She sat on the mattress, facing the cracked wall, her hands clutched tightly around her small Bible like it was the only thing anchoring her to sanity. Dupe tried to help. She brought fufu, played comedy skits, even offered to beat Desmond up with her cousin who just got out of Kirikiri. But nothing worked. Until one night, while they were both seated on the floor, sipping Lipton and eating bread, Dupe spoke what no one else had dared say. "Nike, when last did you do a fertility test?" Nike blinked. "I did once. The basic blood one. That was 2 years ago." 2 years is too long. And I don't mean the hospital in Lekki where Desmond's friend works. I mean a proper, neutral doctor. "I don't need to," Nike said softly. "Desmond said the problem is spiritual. His mother also." Dupe slammed her cup on the floor. "Spiritual my foot." Nike jumped. Dupe's eyes burned. "Listen to me, Nike. You're not cursed. You're not barren. And even if you were, it doesn't make you less of a woman. But we will find out the truth. Not for Desmond. For your peace." Adonike's lips trembled. "You don't understand," she whispered. "If I go, and they confirm it's me, I don't know if I'll survive it." Dupe reached out, took her hand. "And what if it's not you?" The next morning, they boarded a Kiki and headed to LifeSpring Women's Clinic, a quiet facility tucked inside Asakoro. Dupe's aunt worked at the reception and got them a 40% discount. The clinic smelled of Dettol, lavender, and second chances. Dr. Fidelis Okachukwu, a calm man in his early 40s with gentle eyes and a crisp white coat, welcomed them. "Madam Adenike," he said, "please sit. What brings you here today?" Adenike struggled to meet his eyes. Dupe answered for her. She was married for 6 years. No child. Husband blamed her. Divorced her. But she's never had a full fertility assessment. The doctor nodded slowly. "You came to the right place. We'll run all the necessary tests. Scan, hormone levels, ultrasound, egg reserve analysis. It may take a few days, but we will get you clarity." Adenike whispered, "Thank you." The tests were uncomfortable. Long nerve-wracking. Blood samples. Vaginal scans. Hormone tracking. The nurses were kind, but every time Adenike lay on that bed and stared at the white ceiling, all she could hear was Desmond's voice echoing in her memory. "You're a burden. You're the reason we have no child. You're cursed." She clenched her fists. Sweated through her blouse. Prayed beneath her breath. What if he was right? What if everything she lost was because of her? 3 days later, the results were ready. Adenike sat in the consultation room, her palms clammy, her knees bouncing uncontrollably. Dupe sat beside her, biting her nails. Dr. Fidelis entered with a file and a knowing smile. He sat, opened the folder, cleared his throat, and said the words that shattered every lie Desmond ever told. "Madam Adenike, your fertility health is perfect." Adenike blinked. "Sorry." The doctor smiled again. "Your hormone levels are balanced. Your egg reserve is excellent. Your uterus is healthy. You're ovulating regularly. There is nothing medically wrong with you. In fact, I would say you're in optimal reproductive condition." Adenike's vision blurred. Dupe let out a gasp. Are you sure?" Adenike stammered. Dr. Fidelis chuckled gently. "Madam, you're healthier than some 25-year-olds we see. If you were unable to conceive in your marriage, I recommend your former husband also undergo full fertility testing. But as far as you're concerned, you are fine." Adenike covered her mouth. Her shoulders trembled. The tears came, not of joy, but of grief. Grief for the 6 years she spent questioning herself. Grief for the prayers she screamed into her pillow. Grief for the marriage she lost, the home she was cast out of, the woman she used to be. Dupe wrapped her arms around her. "Do you hear that, Nike?" she whispered. "You were never the problem." That evening, Adenike stood in the shower, letting the water run down her face like baptism. She placed her palm on her belly. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel shame. She felt power. "They lied to me," she whispered to herself. "But I will never lie to myself again." Outside the bathroom window, the wind shifted. The first true breeze of her new beginning. The healing didn't happen overnight. But something shifted after the clinic visit. Adenike began to sit outside Dupe's compound in the evenings, just breathing in the Abuja air. She no longer flinched when children ran by laughing. She didn't cry during morning devotionals anymore. She even started cooking again. It began with yam porridge, her specialty. Soft, red, spicy, with perfectly diced onions and just enough palm oil to coat your soul. Dupe came home from her job at the phone accessories shop and nearly wept when she tasted it. "You made this." Adenike smiled faintly. "I had to do something. I was bored." Dupe blinked. "Bored? Stay bored. Make more." The next day she made mwamwa. Then ifo riro. Then jollof. Before long, neighbors began knocking. "Auntie Nike, please, do you have a small plate left?" "Please ma, I can pay, just give me small portion." She resisted at first. Embarrassed. But Dupe nudged her. "You're broke. They're hungry. Let's not overthink destiny." By the end of the week, a table and umbrella had appeared in front of the gate. Handwritten cardboard, home food, Aho kitchen. Aho meaning contribution or journey. It felt right. She wore her old apron. No makeup. Hair in scarf. She charged 500 Nigerian nairas per plate, with cold zobo for 200 Nigerian nairas. It wasn't much, but it was hers. On the 7th day he showed up. Black kaftan. Low haircut. Clean glasses. No swagger. Just peace. "Good morning," he said, smiling at her shyly. "Good morning, sir," she replied. "What's your bestseller?" "Yam porridge and mwamwa." He nodded. "Give me both. And zobo." She served him in a takeaway pack, embarrassed by the faded table, the peeling umbrella. He paid 2,000 Nigerian nairas. Didn't ask for change. "Keep it," he said, "for tomorrow's plate." Then he walked off into the Abuja sun. The next day he returned. Same order. Same overpayment. But this time he stayed. Sat on the plastic chair beside her stand and ate slowly. "Your food tastes like it was cooked by someone who has cried and healed." Adenike blinked. "That's a strange compliment." He chuckled. "It's a rare flavor. Pain and peace in one spoon." His name was Tolu Ayini. He ran a growing logistics company, Jetline Movers, handling bulk delivery for tech startups and vendors across Abuja. He wasn't flashy. His car was dusty. His shoes had no logo. But every time he came, he asked about her day. About her dreams. And never once did he ask why she looked sad when children passed, or why her left hand was always bare. Instead, he talked about his mother, who raised him alone after a bad marriage. "I saw what a broken woman looks like," he said one day. "And I saw what a rebuilt woman becomes." Weeks passed. Aho kitchen grew. Adenike added white rice and egusi to the menu. Then amma. The lines got longer. People came from nearby offices to eat lunch under her umbrella. Even Boda riders began saying, "Go to that woman behind the mechanic shop. The one with eyes like peace. Her jollof day cure heartbreak." But even more consistent than the customers was Tolu. He helped fix her broken umbrella one day. Another day he bought her new plastic chairs. Then a branded banner, Aho Kitchen, real food. Real story. She blushed when she saw it. "I didn't ask for this," she whispered. "I know," he said, "but I figured the world should know your name." One evening, after she had closed for the day, he waited beside her as she washed pots. "I don't want to offend you," he began, "but would you ever consider running this as a full kitchen?" She paused. "You mean like a restaurant?" "Yes. I have an empty office space in Was 2. You can pay me back in time. Or don't. We can partner." Adenike froze. "Why me?" He looked at her, eyes steady. "Because you're already doing it. You're just thinking small." She stared down at her sudsy hands. "I'm not used to people offering me anything without expecting something back." He nodded. "Then let me earn your trust. One pot at a time." She didn't give him an answer that day. Or the next. But a week later, she stood before his office, keys in hand, hair tied back, apron in her bag. He greeted her with warm puff and new branded aprons. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. "I wasn't sure either," she replied. I want to try. He nodded slowly. Welcome, Chef Adenike. Let's build something together. And just like that, a new fire began to burn. Not the fire of revenge. Not the fire of proving anything to Desmond. But the quiet, steady fire of rebuilding one spoon, one smile, one plate at a time. In the distance, the Abuja skyline glittered. Adenike looked up at the sky and whispered, God, I don't know where this is going. But for the first time in years, I feel alive. Wasn't lecky. But in many ways, it was better. It was neutral ground, away from Lagos memories, and closer to destiny. The new Aho kitchen sat at the corner of a busy business complex filled with startups, real estate agents, digital marketers, and Abuja's breed of tech bros who wore kaftans and Yeezys. Adenike opened the doors with nothing but borrowed furniture, Tupperware from Dupe, and a printed menu on A4 paper taped to the wall. But on day one they sold out. By week 2, a fintech company across the street requested daily lunch delivery. By month 2, a food app reached out to list her. By the 3rd month, a food blogger posted her steaming bowl of ogbono and egusi with the caption, "This ain't your husband's mother's soup. Aho Kitchen is the truth." She grew fast, but wisely. Tolu watched her work ethic with quiet pride. He never overstepped. Never tried to manage her. Just supported. He brought in a friend to help set up POS and inventory. He arranged for new uniforms with her logo. He even sat with her at night, teaching her basic Excel so she could track profit, staff pay, and stock levels. But the business was hers. Every seasoning choice. Every recipe. Every decision. Adenike hired 2 other women to help her. One was a widow named Maimuna who made the best tuwo in town. The other was Gift, a secondary school dropout who could slice onions with her eyes closed. I don't just want workers, Adenike told them. I want women who rise with me. She trained them like sisters. Paid them fairly. Let them eat freely. In time, Aho Kitchen became known as the Healing Kitchen. Not because of magic, but because something about Adenike's presence felt like warmth. A woman who had tasted sorrow and still chose sweetness. One evening, after a long day of orders, Adenike was sitting behind the bistro counter, tallying numbers, when a customer walked in and froze. It was a former neighbor from Lagos. One of the women who used to gossip on the compound steps while pretending to peel egusi. Adenike, she whispered. Is that you? Adenike looked up, smiled politely. Yes. Welcome to Aho Kitchen. The woman gawked at the decor, the plants, the tiled floor, the glass signage. See as God works. I heard you moved to Abuja after Desmond sent you away. But look at you now, N. Adenike simply nodded. No bitterness. No revenge speech. Just peace. But the city noticed. One day, a reporter from Abuja Women Rising magazine came for lunch. She didn't reveal herself at first. Just ordered yam porridge and zobo. But the next week, Adenike's face was on the cover. Newspaper, from disgraced wife to business force. The woman behind Aho Kitchen. Inside, the piece detailed her story, not the gossip version, but the truth. Her fall. Her restart. Her silent empire. She didn't mention Desmond. Not once. But somehow, everyone knew. Back in Lagos, Desmond's younger cousin saw the magazine on Instagram and burst into laughter. Desmond, is this not your ex-wife? Desmond snatched the phone. Froze. It was her. Hair in a soft bun. Face glowing. Holding a bowl of yam porridge like royalty. Triplets or not, she had won. He said nothing. Just hissed and walked into his room. Meanwhile, Adenike's bistro got a new makeover. Tolu brought in a branding consultant who reworked her signage, her logo, and her Instagram. He paid for a digital billboard spot at Gwarinpa Junction. Aho Kitchen, home never tasted this good. People began stopping her on the road. Mothers brought their daughters to her for advice. NGOs reached out to invite her to speak to battered women. Someone from the Ministry of Women Affairs called to invite her to a state panel on female entrepreneurship. She had no university degree, no powerful surname, no social media drama. Just grace, grit, and a story too powerful to ignore. One Friday evening as she closed the shop, Tolu came by with Puff Puff again. "Do you realize," he said as they leaned on the shop's glass counter, "that you've hired 7 women now?" Adenike blinked. "Is it up to 7? He smiled. "You built an ecosystem. You did that." She looked away, heart pounding. "We did it." He shook his head slowly. "I only gave you a key. You turned it into a kingdom." As she locked up that night, she looked back at the sign. Aho Kitchen.
Oh.
A journey. One that had begun with tears, betrayal, and shame, but was now a beacon. She whispered beneath her breath. "I'm no longer the woman Desmond divorced. I'm the woman he couldn't keep." The day began like any other Sunday. Rain clouds hung over Abuja like lazy gray sheets. Inside the modest apartment above the bistro, the scent of tomato stew filled the air, ripe tomatoes, tates, crayfish, and sizzling goat meat dancing in hot oil. Adenike was barefoot, wrapper tied tightly around her waist, stirring the pot with practiced grace. Tolu leaned by the kitchen door, arms folded, just watching her. "Do you know you hum when you cook?" he said quietly. She glanced over her shoulder and smiled. "I do." He nodded. "It's always the same melody. Something peaceful. Like a woman who finally feels safe." She stirred slower. No one had ever said that to her before. They ate in silence that afternoon, just the two of them. No music. Just the clink of spoons and the occasional hum of a passing generator outside. When they finished, she rose to clear the plates. But Tolu stood and took them from her. "No," he said, "not today. Sit." She blinked, confused. "Why?" He walked toward the kitchen, but instead of going in, he turned back, hand behind his back. He dropped to one knee. From behind him, he pulled out a ring box. Nothing dramatic. Just clean, quiet, intentional. "Adenike," he began. "You've survived fire. You've rebuilt an empire. You've taught me the meaning of grace. I don't want to rescue you. I want to walk beside you." She covered her mouth. Tears sprang instantly to her eyes. "I don't have anything," she whispered. "No family name. No children. Just pain in pots." He chuckled softly. "And I have a key and a dusty car. But together, we have a future." She laughed through her tears. And nodded. Yes, Tolu. "I'm ready." They didn't throw a big wedding. No choir. No matching aso-ebi. Just a small registry service, a modest white dress, Tolu's mother dancing quietly in the background, and Dupe live-streaming it to friends with tears in her eyes. Afterward, they hosted a small lunch for 30 guests at Aho Kitchen. A pot of jollof, egusi, suya trays, and banana cake baked by Maimuna. Guests said it was the most peaceful wedding they'd ever attended. And when Tolu toasted his bride, he simply said, "She was never the problem. She was the promise." Months passed. Business kept growing. Adenike expanded to weekend meal prep. She hosted free cooking classes for young women. Tolu got a contract to manage delivery for a major pharmacy chain. Life was quiet joy. And then one Tuesday morning, the vomiting started. At first, she assumed it was stress. She'd skipped breakfast. But the next day, it happened again. And the next. And her body felt different. She stared at herself in the bathroom mirror, toothbrush frozen midair. Could it be? She was 36. She had tried for 6 years before. Nothing happened. Surely this wasn't. Still, she bought a test. Just to be sure. She didn't even tell Tolu. The lines showed up before she'd finished counting to 10. Positive. She dropped to the floor. Breath shallow. Chest tight. Pregnant? She clutched the stick to her chest and wept. For the wasted years. For the rain that beat her the night Desmond sent her away. For the months she slept on a mat in Guarimpa, ashamed of her empty womb. And now. She didn't tell Tolu until that evening. He came home, sweaty from work, briefcase in hand, smiling. "I bought small fish," he said. Felt like pepper soup. But when he saw her face, he froze. What happened? She pulled him to the sofa. Took his hand. Placed the test kit in his palm. He stared at it. Looked at her. Back at the test. Then again at her. "Are you serious?" She nodded. I confirmed with the clinic. And there's more. He raised an eyebrow. She pulled out the scanned photo. 3 round shapes. 3 heartbeats. Triplets. Tolu dropped to his knees. Hands on his head. Then to the floor, face buried in her lap. He said nothing for 2 full minutes. Then in a choked voice. God, you do pass like this? Adenike was already crying. This time, not from pain. But from vindication. From restoration. From the miracle that arrived not when she begged, but when she was finally free. Back at her old compound in Lagos, one of her former co-tenants saw the baby bump reveal on Instagram and sent it to Desmond. The caption read, "Never say God is late. Sometimes he's just waiting for you to stop trusting the wrong people." Desmond stared at the image of Adenike's glowing belly, then zoomed in. 3 tiny baby shoes rested on the table beside her. Triplets. He dropped the phone and walked away, silently. That night, under Abuja stars, Adenike sat on the bistro rooftop, rubbing her stomach gently. Tolu joined her with warm zobo. She looked at him, eyes shimmering. "Do you think I'll be a good mother?" He didn't answer right away. He simply kissed her hand and whispered, "You were already a mother, even before they arrived." Desmond reclined on a plush gray leather seat inside his brand-new G-Wagon G63. The car's V8 engine purred beneath him like a lion waiting for permission to roar. He took a slow sip from his Starbucks cup. He didn't even like the taste, but the logo looked nice in photos. His new wife, Yemisi, perched beside him, tapping her heavily manicured nails on her phone screen, adding another boomerang to her Instagram story. "Baby," she said without looking up, "don't forget we need to book Dubai for our post-wedding photo shoot. I want Burj Khalifa this time, not that tired marina again." Desmond nodded absently. "Sure." From the outside, Desmond had made it. He ran a furniture import business his uncle helped him set up after he divorced Adenike. He lived in a serviced apartment in Lekki Phase 1. He wore designer perfumes, posted soft life selfies, and surrounded himself with Instagram-famous acquaintances. But beneath it all, there was hollowness. Even the laughter in his new home sounded different, plastic, rehearsed, filtered. Yemisi was not a bad woman. But she was not Adenike. She was raised differently, loved differently, wanted different things. Where Adenike gave quiet loyalty, Yemisi gave constant visibility. "Baby," she said one night, posing in red lingerie, "when are we doing the gender reveal video for YouTube?" Desmond stiffened. They'd been married for 10 months. No pregnancy. No delay excuses. The pressure was back. His mother had returned with full force. "Are you sure this one's womb is even open?" she asked one Sunday evening, slapping Egusi into a plastic bowl in the kitchen. "Mom, please," Desmond tried. "Don't listen to me. After you drove that first one away because of barrenness, you now brought another one to sit and cross-leg like Instagram madam. No child, no cry, no prayer." Yemisi overheard the conversation and cried that night. Desmond tried to comfort her. But deep down, he was angry too. Why wasn't it happening? They did tests. She was fine. But then again, so was he. Or so the doctor said, although the male fertility results were never as direct as the female ones. Desmond didn't want to go deeper. He felt offended even by the suggestion. In his mind, he was not the problem. The real problem? He'd already thrown her out. Every scroll through Instagram became torture. Adenike's page was filled with food, training sessions, customer reviews, and then the photo. The bump reveal. Her glowing, smiling. Tolu holding her from behind. A caption that read, "From tears to triplets. My God writes full circle stories." Desmond's chest tightened. Triplets? Triplets. He zoomed into the image like a madman. Not even one. Not twins. 3. He couldn't breathe. He threw his phone across the room. Yemisi looked up from where she was painting her toes. "Babe?" she asked. He didn't answer. He just got up and walked into the bathroom, locked the door, and for the first time in years, he cried. Silently. Into the marble sink. Yemisi went for IVF a few weeks later. Quietly. Her aunt recommended a discreet clinic in Surulere. She didn't even tell Desmond at first. She just said she was taking vitamins. But the injections, the hormones, the failed first round, it broke her. One night, after their date night dinner, she lay in bed, watching him sleep, and whispered to herself, "Why did I marry a man haunted by his past?" Meanwhile, gossip had begun. The same neighbors who once pitted Adenike were now sending WhatsApp messages like, "Have you seen Desmond's ex-wife? God really changed her story, oh. That one that used to be quiet like church rat, now she's carrying triplets. And him? Still doing boy with all these flashy girls. No child, no peace." Back in his Lekki apartment, Desmond sat on his balcony one evening, watching the street lights. He held a glass of wine, untouched. His driver had just washed the G-Wagon again. Chrome gleaming. He looked down at the street below. Then whispered, "Was it really worth it?" His phone vibrated. It was his mother. He didn't pick. It vibrated again. This time it was a wedding planner, confirming his upcoming wedding relaunch and media push. He stared at it, then turned the phone face down, and sighed. The world clapped for him. But his soul knew better. What he had was noise. What he lost was peace. It was a bright Wednesday morning in Abuja. Adenike had just finished a delivery meeting with her suppliers at the Aho Kitchen warehouse. She was sipping ginger tea on the balcony of her office when her assistant, Maimuna, stepped in, holding a white and gold envelope. "Madam," she said, handing it over. "This came for you. Hand-delivered. Abuja stamp." Adenike took it slowly. There was no name on the front, just a black calligraphy swirl. "Celebrating true love, you're invited." Her fingers paused. She opened the envelope. Inside was a wedding for, embossed, expensive, smelling faintly of oud. The wedding of Desmond and Yemisi, love like no other. The date, 3 weeks away. The venue, Aso Rock Gardens, Abuja. A luxury wedding. On the back, in a neat scrawl, someone had written, "No hard feelings. You're welcome to attend. Would be nice to see you again. D." She stared at the note. Maimuna frowned. "Is everything all right, madam?" Adenike didn't answer immediately. Then calmly she smiled. Folded the invitation. "Everything is just getting started." Across town, Desmond chuckled as he sipped his wine. He had just gotten word from his PA that the 4 was delivered. Yemisi was across the room taking a makeup tutorial from a YouTuber on her iPad. "Baby," he said, "I've decided to invite my ex to the wedding." Yemisi turned sharply. "Why?" "Closure," he shrugged. "Let her see what peace looks like." Yemisi narrowed her eyes, then smirked. "You just want her to see that we're better. It's okay. I understand." They both laughed. They thought it was a final slap. But it would become their greatest humiliation. In Lagos, Dupe burst into the kitchen when Adenike showed her the 4. "What?" "Yes," Adenike said, calm as a mountain breeze. "He wants me to come. Publicly." Dupe paced. "This is a setup. You know he thinks you're still poor. Still alone." Adenike touched her belly gently, now visibly round. "I know. What are you going to do?" Adenike smiled. Then whispered, "I'm going to attend. But not as his memory. As my own revelation." That evening, she told Tolu. He read the card and chuckled. "Petty man." Then he looked her in the eye. "You don't have to prove anything to him." "I know," she replied. "But I do have to show up. For every woman who's been left behind." The planning began quietly. She didn't post anything online. Didn't make noise. But behind the scenes, a private stylist flew in from Dubai to fit her emerald green lace dress. Her 3 babies had custom-made agbadas and mini ankara gowns. Tolu arranged for a private jet to be chartered from Lagos to Abuja. Her makeup artist was the same one that did the president's wife's look for Independence Day. The press? Already waiting, though they didn't know who was coming. A week before the wedding, Desmond gave a speech at his bachelor's party. "When you finally find the real deal, you don't look back." His friends cheered. They clinked glasses. But no one knew he still secretly checked Adenike's Instagram at midnight. Meanwhile, Yemisi rehearsed her bridal walk for TikTok. her caption already saved in drafts. He who laughs last, laughs loudest. Ring red heart, fire #wife goals #married to the best. She had no idea that the real caption waiting to go viral would be written by silence. On the final night before the wedding, Nike sat in her children's nursery, brushing their soft baby hair as they slept. She whispered, "Tomorrow, my darlings, we walk into the room they tried to bury us from." Her eyes glistened, not from revenge, but from closure. In Abuja, Desmond sent out his last WhatsApp reminder to guests. No latecomers. Ceremony starts strictly 12 noon. No African time. Yemisi posted her final pre-wedding selfie with the caption, "About to become Mrs. Desmond Ajayi. Haters, how market?" And Nike? She posted nothing. But in the soft light of her bedroom, her private jet itinerary glowed on her screen. Departure time, 10 a.m. Location, Murtala Muhammad Airport, private hangar B. She closed her laptop and whispered to herself, God doesn't just restore. He prepares a table in front of them. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and cruelly beautiful in Abuja. Aso Rock Gardens shimmered like something out of a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers hung from floating white tents. Tables glistened with gold-plated cutlery. Flower petals paved the aisle like a red carpet designed for gods. Guests, influencers, and high society elites streamed in, clad in geli, agbada, lace, Gucci, and pride. Soft Yoruba Fuji music blended with saxophone jazz. Camera crews from Ovation Magazine and Arise TV were already stationed, hungry for content. And Desmond? He stood at the altar in a custom-made white tuxedo, hands clasped behind his back, smiling confidently as he whispered to his groomsmen, "She won't come. But if she does, oh, she'll wish she didn't." Back in Lagos, the private jet stood prepped on the tarmac at MAA Hangar B. The pilot adjusted his headset. Flight crew stood ready. And then she arrived. Adenike, clad in a floor-length emerald green lace gown, hand-stitched, with delicate beadwork that shimmered like rain on a mango leaf. Her skin glowed with undertones of honey and victory. Her geli sat perfectly, royal, bold, defiant. On each side of her stood her triplets. 2 boys in miniature agbadas. A girl in ankara and soft gold sandals. Their eyes sparkled. Their tiny hands held hers. Tolu walked a respectful step behind her, not claiming the moment, just protecting it. A media photographer gasped. "Wait, is that?" The jet door opened. She walked up the steps like she owned time. And as the engines roared, the world below shifted. At Aso Rock Gardens, Desmond was fidgeting now. He checked his gold wristwatch for the 5th time. Guests were seated. Yemisi had finished her 2-hour bridal makeup ritual and was being ushered to the top of the aisle. And just as the officiant cleared his throat to begin, a hush fell. People turned. Phones were raised. Guess. A black Bentley pulled up and parked. But no one stepped out. Instead, a low rumble filled the air. Not from the speakers. From the sky. Eyes turned upward. And there it was. Marked, Sirius jet charter, Lagos to Abuja. Descending smoothly, gliding like a whisper of judgment. The jet landed on the adjacent private helipad. Desmond blinked. Yemisi froze mid-step. The music stopped. Even the saxophonist paused. A gold stair ramp lowered. The door opened. And out she stepped. Adenike. Emerald green. Gleaming. Glowing. Her triplets followed, coordinated. Regal. Glorious. Silence. Even the palm trees seemed to bow. Desmond's knees nearly buckled. The groomsman whispered, "Omo, that's your ex-wife." Yemisi's eyes burned holes into his skull. Photographers rushed toward the jet stairs. Flashbulbs. Screams. Lenses popping. Someone whispered, "She came in a private jet?" Another gasped, "Those kids. Are those his triplets?" Aunties covered their mouths in awe. Uncles nodded like they were witnessing divine judgment. Adenike walked in slow motion. She didn't wave. Didn't speak. She just walked with her head high, through the stunned crowd. Each step was a sermon. Each gaze was a reclamation. She paused at the edge of the aisle. locked eyes with Desmond, and smiled. Just slightly. Desmond stepped forward. Nike. His voice cracked. She tilted her head gently. Thank you. He blinked. For what? She took a deep breath, looked at the crowd, then softly added, for setting me free. And with that, she turned, lifted her daughter into her arms. Toulouse stepped forward, gathered the boys. They walked away, past the crowd, past the shame, past the past. Desmond stood frozen. His mother, seated in the front row, dropped her fan in shock. Yemisi? Tears welled in her eyes. Not just because of the entrance, but because in that moment she knew. She would never measure up to what he lost. As Adonai's convoy drove off, one of the triplets looked up at her. Mummy, why did they all stop talking? She smiled. Because, my love, when light enters a room, even shadows must pause. Somewhere above Abuja, the jet ascended again, this time headed back home. The babies slept. Tolu dozed beside her. Adenike looked out the window, the clouds parting like heaven itself, and whispered, God, you didn't just give me children. You gave me myself. 2 hours after the jet disappeared from the Abuja skyline, the wedding was still technically underway. But the spirit had left the building. Guests whispered more about her than the couple at the altar. The saxophonist quietly packed up. Ovation magazine deleted their Bride of the Year caption draft and replaced it with Mystery Woman stuns at Aso Rock wedding in private jet. Who is she? Desmond sat like stone in the groom's chair. His smile had long vanished. His lips were dry. His thoughts chaotic. His ex-wife. Not only had she shown up, she had stolen the show. Without saying a cruel word. Without clapping back. Without seeking revenge. Just presence. Confidence. Glory. It haunted him. Yemisi? She smiled for the cameras. She finished the ceremony. She wore the ring. But deep down she knew the truth. Desmond's heart was no longer in the room. Not because he loved Adenike again, but because he would forever be haunted by the memory of what he destroyed. Back in Lagos, the Aho kitchen was buzzing with life again by the next morning. Maimuna stood at the register taking POS payments. Dupe was organizing stock in the cold room. And Adenike? She was in the back room, sitting cross-legged with her triplets playing Ludo on the floor. No Instagram posts. No press interviews. No, I told you so. Just peace. Tolu walked in and placed a steaming plate beside her. Yam porridge. With goat meat. She smiled. You remembered my Sunday favorite. He sat beside her, kissed her forehead gently and said, You reminded them who you were yesterday. Now rest. You don't know the past anything. Later that week, a journalist from Cityscope magazine showed up. We'd love an exclusive story on how you rose from hardship to jet arrival, she said eagerly. Adenike smiled and shook her head. No thank you. The journalist blinked. Why not? Adenike answered simply. Because true power doesn't scream. It whispers. That same week, Desmond tried to send a message through a mutual friend. He wanted to talk. Adenike never replied. Instead, she donated 5 million Nigerian nairas to the Women of Rain Foundation, a support group for divorced women and abandoned mothers. The caption read, To every woman who was told her womb was the problem, I see you. And you are not the problem. You are the beginning of miracles. The message went viral. Not her jet. Not her dress. That quote. It became the WhatsApp status of aunties, sisters, and strangers. It was printed on shirts. And suddenly, Madame Aho wasn't just a businesswoman. She became a symbol. Of rebirth. Of quiet power. Of dignity. Desmond? He began drinking heavily. His business struggled. Yemisi started disappearing for late-night work trips. His mother returned to praying at 5 a.m. again, this time for another womb to open. He couldn't focus. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that emerald green lace. And those 3 little faces. Triplets. That could have been his. But Adenike? She woke up every day to baby laughter, morning dew, and the smell of moi steaming in banana leaves. She no longer felt pain when she heard Desmond's name. She no longer flinched when someone said, Baron. She had healed. Not because she got even, but because she got better. One morning, Tolu handed her a small box. Inside, a gold necklace inscribed with the words, emerged. She touched it and smiled. I love it. Tolu kissed her gently and replied, it's who you are. That night, as rain drizzled on the rooftop, and her babies slept soundly in their cribs, Adenike stepped onto her balcony, looked up at the sky, and whispered, God, you didn't just vindicate me. You made me a voice. Thank you. She didn't need applause. She didn't need revenge. She had peace. And that was the loudest win of all. It started as whispers, then gossip, then full-blown obsession. By Monday morning, the phrase, Jet Bride Ex-Wife, was trending across Twitter Nigeria, Facebook Reels, TikTok, and even within church WhatsApp groups. Screenshots of her arrival circulated with captions like, when grace locates you. She came silently, left loudly. Private jet plus triplets equals God of Adenike. Radio talk shows picked it up. Who is this woman? A host on Lagos 101.7 FM asked. I heard she owns that Aho kitchen in Lekki, said a caller. I heard her new husband is one tech billionaire hiding from EFCC. Another joked. They laughed. But beneath the laughter was awe. At women's fellowship meetings in Ikeja and Enugu, the story became a prayer point. Lord, the same way you remembered Adenike, remember my sister here today. Even on campuses, final year girls quoted her line. You didn't just give me children. You gave me back myself. Meanwhile in Abuja, Desmond sat alone in his office, staring blankly at a stack of untouched files. The wedding video? Still not edited. Honeymoon plans? Cancelled. Yemisi? She was already back in Lagos, claiming urgent makeup bookings and ignoring his calls. His phone pinged. Headline: Abuja groom's ex-wife upstages wedding with jet and trance. He slammed the phone face down. But it was too late. The humiliation was now immortalized online. His assistant, Kunal, peeked into the office. Oga, should I reschedule your 2 p.m. board meeting? Desmond didn't even look up. Yes. Kunal hesitated, then added gently, Sir, you might want to stop reading the comments. But how could he? Everywhere he turned, she was the conversation. Not for being petty, not for dragging him, but for doing the one thing he thought impossible. Outgrowing him. He sat in silence, haunted by a single thought. Those triplets could have been mine. At a beauty salon in Yaba, Yemisi sat under a dryer scrolling Instagram. She watched the viral clip of Adenike stepping off the jet, over and over again. Rewind. Play. Rewind. Play. Not out of jealousy, but out of dread. Because deep down she knew. Desmond would never look at her with the same awe again. Not after that. Not ever. And as if fate had more to add. That night, Desmond received a small envelope delivered by courier. No name. No return address. Just a scan report. Paternity test negative. His jaw clenched. His hands trembled. The IVF baby Yemisi was carrying wasn't his. He fell back into his chair. Sweat pooled at his temples. A single tear escaped his eye. He had lost everything. Back in Lagos, Adenike was unbothered. While the world dissected her return, she was organizing a food drive for widows in Bariga. She didn't want fame. She wanted to give back. She told Tolu one evening, when I was kicked out, all I had was a nylon bag and tears. Now that I have plenty, I want to be the bag in someone else's storm. Tolu simply nodded. He admired her more with every passing day. Not because she was trending, but because she remained grounded, unshakable. Even her triplets were adjusting well. One afternoon, their daughter pointed to a billboard with her mother's picture on it and asked, Mummy, why is everyone talking about you? Adenike smiled gently. Because sometimes, when you walk through fire and come out glowing, the world wants to know how. At the Aho kitchen, customers doubled. Patronage poured in not just for the food, but the spirit behind it. Young women came just to see her. To say, Auntie Adenike, you gave me hope. And she would always smile and reply, hope is free, but you must choose to hold it. But far away, in a silent Abuja mansion, Desmond poured another glass of whiskey. Alone. No wife. No children. No peace. Only echoes of a woman he thought was replaceable. He scrolled to one of her photos and whispered bitterly, you were never supposed to win. But the truth was undeniable. She didn't just win. She became the standard. In the days following her quiet but earth-shaking return, Adenike did not chase attention. Attention chased her. DSTV Africa Magic reached out. They wanted a reality show. Madame Aho, from nylon bag to private jet. She declined. Ibuka's interview team messaged her management. She politely said no. Even CNN Africa sent a soft inquiry. She smiled and said, I'm not a story. I'm a vessel. Instead of TV lights, she focused on real ones. The street lights in Iwaya. The candle flickers in Bariga. The market bulbs in Jakande. She launched the Aho Sisters Foundation, aimed at helping divorced and abandoned women, barren women wrongly blamed, mothers raising children alone, girls who dropped out due to shame or pregnancy. And she didn't just donate money. She showed up. At the first outreach event, in a dusty open field in Mushin, hundreds of women gathered. Many had heard the jet story. Some had cried when they watched the video. But none expected her to come in person. She wore a simple ankara blouse and wrapper. No lace. No makeup artist. No entourage. She climbed the small wooden platform with a calm that silenced the whispers. Then she began. I was called barren for 6 years. I was mocked. My womb was blamed. I almost took my life. The crowd stilled. She paused, then continued. But today I carry 3 children in my arms and millions in purpose. Not because I fought back with anger, but because I surrendered my shame and found my strength. Women wept. Some fell to their knees. Others just clapped with trembling hands. A young girl whispered to her friend, I want to be like her one day. And her friend replied, me, I want to survive like her. That evening, #AhoSisters trended on social media. But Adenike was offline. She was in her living room, breastfeeding one of the triplets, singing an old Yoruba lullaby her late grandmother used to sing. Orin Ao Lmi Makeo. To Lauren Tefeo Sinimi. I will sing songs of joy, for God has placed joy within me. Meanwhile in Abuja, Desmond saw the trending clips. He sat in silence. The TV was on, but his mind wasn't. All he could think was, she used to cry beside me. Now, others cry because of her strength. He considered calling. Just once. To say sorry. To apologize. But what would it change? She had become untouchable. Not by status, but by peace. She was beyond reach. Back in Lagos, a board meeting was held for the Aho Kitchen Group. They were planning their next branch in Victoria Island. The investor from Nairobi asked, have you considered franchising into East Africa? Adenike paused, then smiled. Only if the vision stays pure. Tolu leaned toward her after the meeting. Still not used to being the boss? She chuckled. No. I'm still that woman who once measured Gary with a matchbox. Later, as they walked home hand in hand, Tolu stopped her under the glow of a flickering streetlight. I have something to ask. Adenike raised her brow. Again. He smiled. Not marriage. We already did that. Then he reached into his bag and pulled out an envelope. It was a land deed. For your foundation. Your own building. No rent. No limitations. She gasped. Tears welled. I don't know what to say. He replied. Just promise you'll keep being a voice. Even for those who still whisper. That night, Adenike journaled by candlelight. I asked for 1 child. You gave me 3. I asked for peace. You gave me purpose. I asked for justice. You gave me a platform. I will not waste this grace. Her triplets stirred in their sleep. She leaned down, kissed their foreheads, and whispered, your mother is no longer the woman they mocked. She is the woman they now quote. Desmond no longer smiled in public. But he still posted as if he did. His Instagram showed brunch at Hilton, gym selfies, boardroom snaps with the caption, "Chasing Legacy. No distractions." But offline? The mirrors knew the truth. At night, he scrolled endlessly through news articles, old photos of Adenike, blurry images of her triplets, interviews she never granted but others gave on her behalf. One video had millions of views. From barren ex-wife to mother of triplets, Adenike's silent grace. He played it 17 times. And wept after the 18th. Yemisi returned to Abuja after a week of ghosting him. She arrived wearing oversized sunglasses, a fake smile, and a fresh BBL. "Baby," she said, "I needed to clear my head." Desmond poured a drink. "I saw the test result." Her face froze. "I can explain." He cut her off. "You were never pregnant. IVF or not. And even if you were, the baby isn't mine." Yemisi dropped the bag she was holding. "Desmond, listen." He raised a hand. "No more lies." Later that night, neighbors overheard shouting. Glass shattering. By morning, Yemisi had packed and left again. This time, maybe for good. But Desmond's problems had just begun. A financial audit flagged irregularities in his logistics firm. A former staff member leaked internal emails to the press. The headline hit like thunder. "From groom to grief, wedding magnate under scrutiny for fraud." The board called for an emergency session. His lawyer advised silence. His PR manager quit. He sat in his once glorious office, now dark, dusty, and empty. He thought of calling his mother. But she was now back in the village, ill and bitter, having lost all her bragging rights. "The new girl hasn't given us anything," she once shouted on a family call. "I told you, Adenike was the real blessing. You chased her away like a goat." He had ended the call mid-rant. But her words haunted him. Meanwhile, Adenike was in Bagada supervising the foundation's new shelter. She had just finished reviewing the dormitory layout when a volunteer tapped her gently. "There's a woman outside asking to see you." Adenike stepped out. Her breath caught. It was Mama Desmond. Looking older. Weaker. Humbled. "Mama?" Adenike whispered. The old woman looked down, then slowly knelt. My daughter, forgive me." A few passers-by turned to look. She remained on her knees. "I chased you out. I cursed your womb. I was wrong. God used you to show me pepper." Adenike lifted her gently. "You shouldn't kneel, Mama." "I must." "Your grace exposed my wickedness." Adenike helped her inside, gave her water, and offered her a seat. They spoke for hours. She did not gloat. She listened. And when Mama Desmond left, she did so with a full food package, transportation money, and dignity. That evening, Desmond's phone rang. He answered without checking the caller. "Mama?" Her voice was gentle. "I saw her today." He paused. "She's bigger than you now, Desmond. Not because of money, but because she healed. You're still bleeding." He hung up and sobbed into the silence. That night, the city of Abuja glittered as usual. But inside one penthouse suite, a man once hailed as a king curled up on cold marble tiles, whispering, "I was the disgrace, not her." Back in Lagos, the Aho Kitchen launched a community feeding program, offering free Sunday meals to 100 people every week. Tolu looked at Adenike as they packed jollof rice and chicken. "You know you don't have to do all this yourself." She smiled. "I know. But this isn't about food." "What is it about then?" "Restoration." The couple stood hand in hand as a line of mothers and children filed in, receiving meals with smiles and teary thank yous. Afterwards, one of the foundation girls gave her a handwritten letter. "You taught me that dignity is louder than revenge." Adenike folded the note, held it to her heart, and whispered, "That's all I wanted to become." Abuja was hot that week. But Desmond felt cold inside. Not the kind of cold that air conditioners bring. The kind of cold that seeps into your bones. Regret, failure, loneliness. His business was hanging by a thread. His so-called friends had disappeared. Yemisi had posted new photos in Dubai with a mysterious billionaire sponsor. And his mother had stopped picking his calls. But something strange arrived that morning. A white envelope, No name. Just his address. Inside, a single card. You are cordially invited to the 10th Annual Women of Strength Awards, special recognition for community impact. Honoring Mrs. Adenike Adebayo, founder, Aho Sisters Foundation. Location, Transcorp Hilton Abuja. Date, Saturday, 6 p.m. Dress code, regal black. Desmond sat still. The same hotel where he had tried to humiliate her. Now, she was returning. But this time, not as a guest. As the main event. He wanted to throw the card away. He wanted to laugh. But he couldn't. Something pulled at his chest, humiliation, but also something deeper. Jealousy? Longing? He texted her. Desmond, congrats. You deserve it. No reply. Meanwhile in Lagos, Adenike was in her office. The triplets were napping in the nursery next door. She read the award letter again. Not because she didn't believe it, but because she still struggled to believe this was her life now. Tolu walked in, holding a dress bag. I had this made. Custom. Regal black, they said. She raised an eyebrow. He grinned. You're not just attending. You're owning the night. Saturday came. The Transcorp ballroom glittered like something from a dream. High-profile guests. Ambassadors. Celebrities. Influencers. But all eyes turned when she arrived. Not in a private jet this time, but in quiet elegance. A regal black velvet dress, embroidered with subtle gold threads. A wraparound geli sat like a crown on her head. Her triplets wore matching outfits, mini tuxedos and lace gowns. The hall went still. The same hall where she had once been ignored. Now they rose to their feet. The host, a popular TV anchor, cleared her throat. Tonight, we honor not just a woman who overcame, but one who turned her pain into purpose. She was cast aside. She was mocked. She was called barren. But today, she feeds hundreds, shelters dozens, and inspires millions. Please welcome Mrs. Adenike Adebayo. She walked up slowly. Each step radiated quiet power. She stood at the podium and exhaled. Then began. Once upon a time, I was just a wife with hope in her heart. I gave love. I gave time. I gave my womb. But I was told I was empty. So I left with nothing. Nothing but faith. The crowd leaned in. That faith became my seed. And that seed became my garden. Today, I no longer cry at night. Today, I no longer beg to be seen. I serve. And I am seen by God and by women like me. Thunderous applause. Cameras flashed. But in the very back of the hall, someone stood quietly. Desmond. He hadn't planned to come. But something about her voice. It healed him and wounded him at the same time. He didn't speak to her. He didn't approach. He simply clapped. And cried. For the first time, truly. After the event, in her hotel room, Adenike was removing her earrings when one of the triplets toddled toward her. Mama, you win? She smiled. I did, baby. Tolu wrapped an arm around her. And the best part is, you didn't have to fight dirty. That night, as she laid in bed, her phone buzzed again. A message. Desmond, thank you. Not for replying, but for becoming the woman I never deserved. She typed. Then deleted the reply. Some things were better left unread. The screen faded to black. Then her voice echoed softly. They invited me to mock me. But God sent me to remind them, you cannot disgrace who grace has already crowned. It was a cool Sunday morning at Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja. Private jets taxied slowly across the tarmac. The staff at the VIP lounge were unusually excited. Not because of a politician or a foreign dignitary, but because of her. Adenike stepped out of the black SUV, wearing a cream kaftan and soft sandals. Her geli was simple this time. No velvet. No embroidery. But she carried the air of someone who had climbed a mountain barefoot and come back down smiling. Tolu held one child. She held another. The third, little Dara, walked beside them in tiny white sneakers, holding her mother's clutch bag like a treasure. The airport crew greeted her with silent awe. Some whispered, "That's the woman from Aho Kitchen." You didn't hear? She used to sell food by the roadside. Now she has a foundation and triplets. As she waited for her jet to be cleared for boarding, she noticed a familiar face near the check-in counter. Desmond. Alone. No ring. No bags. Their eyes met. No tension. No hatred. Just history. He took a few steps toward her. Stopped at a distance. Then said softly, I was going to London. For nothing important. Just needed air. She smiled politely. Travel safe. He looked down at the child in her arms. He looks like you. A small silence passed. Then he added, They all do. She nodded. They have my name too. That one stung. Gently but precisely. Still he nodded with respect. I'm glad. He hesitated. I used to pray you'd never move on. She raised a brow. But I did. And I'm grateful you did, he said, almost to himself. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. It's not money. Just a letter. I wrote it the day I saw you walk out of that jet. She didn't take it. Not immediately. You don't need to explain anymore, Desmond. He looked pained, but understanding. I know. But sometimes, apologies aren't about reopening the past. They're about closing it properly. She took the letter, folded it, slipped it into her tote bag without reading, then extended her hand. He shook it gently. Goodbye, Desmond. He smiled, the first real smile in a long time. Goodbye, Adenike. He turned and walked away, not with defeat, but with release. A few minutes later, her jet stood ready. As they boarded, one of the triplets asked, Mama, who was that man? She thought for a moment, then replied, Someone who taught me that sometimes losing everything is how you find yourself. Inside the jet, the babies snacked on chin-chin and biscuits. Tolu poured her a glass of Zobo and kissed her forehead. You did it. She leaned back in the plush seat, closed her eyes and whispered, We did. As the plane soared above the clouds, Adenike gazed out the window. Lagos waited below, with its chaos and charm. But she was no longer afraid of returning. She had faced her shame, turned it into strength. And now, she flew above it. A soft narration faded in. They invited me to be shamed, but I arrived clothed in grace. They called me barren, but I bore fruit in purpose. They thought they ended my story, but God was just flipping the page. Back at the Aho Kitchen Training Center, a young girl reads from a workbook. The only revenge a woman needs is to heal so loudly, the world cannot deny her. On the wall behind her, a large framed portrait of Adenike and her triplets hangs proudly. Captioned, From disgrace to graced, the woman who flew above it all.